Now broadcasting from the Next Gen Conservative Studio in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report with Sam Whitfield.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the show and the Wednesday night edition of the Whitfield Report. More specifically, I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live here from South Florida. And I want to thank you all for joining me this evening. Before we begin, because we do have our first guest tonight, since relaunching the show, or rather being on hiatus. But before we begin doing that, I do want to address real quick, yes, it has been confirmed. My YouTube channel is officially dead in the water. It's been dead for about a week now, but people, suggested that I appeal it. And, I did just that, but the good folks at YouTube got back to me yesterday and basically said that, the channel is permanently banned. They still have not given a reason as to why the channel got banned or what community guideline I supposedly violated. I assume at this point that a bot was the one that did the manual review, which is very telling. I don't know if someone struck the channel or what. I have a suspicion of maybe a few people who might have tried striking the channel, but it could have just been my channel was on the chopping block with the new YouTube management. But anyway, we are here. We're live on both Odyssey and Rumble, if you guys want to tune in over there. And I know that we will have people popping in chat. And as always, you can catch the replay of this on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. With that being said, I would like to go ahead and introduce our first guest of this era of the Whitfield Report, Mr. Craig D. Mansfield, who I have been mispronouncing his last name all week, so I apologize for that, sir. But welcome to the show.
No worries.
And from my understanding,
thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And you and I have known each other through some of the YouTube, like, e-drama circles, I guess. But from my understanding, you're a chemical engineer. That's what you do IRL.
Yes.
And so one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, the main reason why I wanted to have you on is a couple of different things. The whole situation in Ohio and, East Palestine with all these train derailments happening across the country. That's been a big issue, over the past couple weeks. And then there are possible fears that, this thing in Ukraine might go nuclear. And then I just wanted to ask you about nuclear power in and of itself, since there are a bunch of, kind of, I guess, misconceptions surrounding that. But before any of that, just what is your general background, I guess?
Well, you've correctly ascertained there. Shit posting on Twitter is not my profession. So I'm a chemical engineer. I have degrees in chemical engineering and chemistry. I'm wrapping up a PhD right now involving polymer processing. So I'm still chemical engineering, but it's a little more math heavy now, if that's believable. And so I graduated with my degrees from undergrad in 2006. No, 2011. Sorry, it has been a long day.
It's fine.
So the actually it's unfortunate that it happened, but it's fortunate enough that I'm able to be of some use in this regard. That the train accident in East Palestine involved things that are right up my alley. So a lot of monomers that were being sent for polymer processing or perhaps other specialty chemical use. Otherwise my background's pretty boring at that point. But yeah, it's chemical engineering and chemistry. Specializations were in analytical model formulation in undergrad. So taking stuff that would normally be really difficult to solve just by rote algebra or calculus, and then solving that more directly rather than using a numerical method. And then also process design, so designing chemical plants.
I see. So have you done work in like the private sector or anything government related, or
I've done.
Gonna have to kill me for asking?
No. I just have to put you in space. I've got through my undergrad, 5.5 years for my first 2 degrees. They are separate individual ones. Got done there, did a summer working for Dow, doing programming for them for a pre-processing program for their industrial customers to make sure the data that they put in is squared away as the data that it's supposed to be for their coatings division. And then I went in for grad school. Actually, it's taking quite a while. I'm almost done. It's basically my 3rd thesis in a row here. So fun that it was. It's time to be done with that.
Cool.
But as a matter of course for that, I've worked with several national labs. So Savannah River National Lab, Oak Ridge National Lab. I've worked with NASA doing modeling of 3D printing layup process for printing drones on Mars. So you can print out a drone on Mars, have it fly around, and then land on the place it started from, and then get ground up and reused, that kind of thing.
Nice.
So it's been a wide variety of things, and also a couple other private companies for other parts of my research.
Are you by chance working on any of this space exploration stuff? Because I live in Florida, and I just went to the Kennedy
You're not that
Space
far from
Center
me.
about a month ago, and
so I'm up in Gainesville right now.
Oh, no kidding!
Nope,
yeah,
I'm right there. The grad school I'm still wrapping up with is Virginia Tech, but I've since moved away since I'm just doing my thesis writing right now. I'm done with the experimental part.
Well, yeah. I mean that's cool. So,
but no, I'm not working in anything involving space right now. When I get done, that's within purview. Maybe the SpaceX stuff out there in Texas might be interesting, but I think they finally moved a couple of jobs that would be well overlapped with me over to Texas. The last time I checked, a few months ago, all of their injection molding jobs were still out in California, and I really don't feel like moving out there.
I wouldn't want to move to California either after being in Florida. So
I much prefer to be here than out there. Texas being a close second.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. So, and I mean, so I guess my first question, I don't really even know how to really ask this, but one of the reasons why it was suggested to bring you on because right now everyone is freaking out about these train derailments that have been happening across the country. The far I guess right, the conspiracy minded people on the right are thinking this is the deep state just derailing trains and, smuggling nuclear war and smuggling like nuclear weapons in
I could see
to
that.
eradicate the population. And
No,
but that
I mean the simple answer to that posited premise for these accidents, the setting of a stage, so to speak, is that it is bunk. The life that you'd have to live, or the world you'd have to live in, would become complicated in such a different way, and it's already complicated enough. Occam's razor here is pretty straightforward on this one.
yeah, for
Now
sure.
that said, it's not that there isn't evidence that might be plausibly supportive of that. For instance, after some derailments happen all the time, by the way, and it can be as little as a wheel slipping off track to cars falling off the track. So it's kind of like saying, the reason why there's so many car accidents is because the government's out to get you. Now, thankfully, train accidents, derailments anyway, happen far less frequently than car accidents. But there's also fewer trains than there are cars, so you have to keep it within reason.
Sure.
But after you have these derailments that were popularized on the news, you did find out that again afterwards. So there's possibility for a copycat motive being involved. People had, police had been notified of pipe bombs that had been laid on some train tracks that were thankfully defused and removed. So that's not good, but that's also indicative of some other issues. But the thing I was going to come back to here, that when it comes to the actual derailments that everybody deals with kind of on a day-to-day basis, our infrastructure in this country has had a failing grade, or a D or a D minus grade for the past like 40 years. It's not good, and what we're seeing is partly and I would say it's far more likely that we're right now seeing that come to fruition. The fact of the matter is that Norfolk Southern basically bribed their way into not having to deal with extra regulations that everyone else was dealing with as a rail company, and then they had a wheel fail. Looks like the root cause was a bearing failure, which has nothing to do with the braking schedule, which people were trying to lay blame at Trump's feet for. So it's really a Department of Transit issue more than it is any individual administration issue as well. But the kind of crap icing on that crap salad, if you will, is the current admin's their lack of empathy, if you will. FEMA saying that FEMA can't pay for cleanup in the area or assistance in the area when it's specifically funded to be able to handle issues like this. That's indicative of the way that the current admin is handling this accident. It's not very good.
What is their reasoning for not being able to fund?
I have no idea. I don't understand the machinations of what goes on in that bureaucration.
Yeah, well, neither do I. I mean,
a layperson would say we pay taxes, and therefore because we pay taxes on funding which is promised prior to being funded, and so we operate on a debt. There's no reason why something that it looks like it's on the order of millions should be a big problem in a budget of trillions.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we're reprioritizing here. The money that we could be spending on
right.
infrastructure is now going to transgender bathrooms in these government buildings.
Well, what was it? The $10 million we spent on training, on gender sensitivity training in Pakistan. That was more important. This of course years back, so not like it's being a substitution now like Ukraine is. But like that's we spend $10 million trying to train a whole bunch of people who think of women as farm animals, to use the right pronouns, and we're not going to go and give these people bottles of water. I don't understand how that really computes in the budgetary office, but whatever. I guess we pay taxes to fund the people that are supposed to justify that to us too, and they're not doing their jobs either.
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing is a giant bureaucracy. Joining us is producer Max Sand, liking the Commander Cobra vibe.
Oh yeah, we were joking around about the based Cobra Commander who would have like plans to mess with like the left and the progressives in a cartoonish fashion, kind of the way they think we are, would be kind of funny.
Oh man, you don't have any idea how funny and appropriate that that choice is going to be shortly when we start talking about Ukraine and Putin.
Oh, yes, I can see.
I just have China's answer to us having rods from God in the sky is their hypersonic missiles. So you remember, what was it, the second G.I. Joe movie that came out recently was predicated on that the same kind of devices being used.
Yeah. I mean, really, there are just a bunch of avenues that we could, go down. But I mean, also in regards to the train thing, like, is nuclear waste just spilling out? Because
No.
I mean, we already addressed like the super right wing conspiracy theory, but now there's the left wing conspiracy by the environmental wackos that are saying, "Oh, nuclear waste is killing the animals in Ohio."
No, absolutely. I can answer this one for you categorically. No, there was no nuclear material involved in that train wreck. None.
Yeah, they keep calling it the America's new Chernobyl, and it's like,
that's
not.
So just put it in perspective. Chernobyl happened decades ago. It has not. Now, I said that happened. I should have said it started happening. It is still an ongoing disaster, and
Right.
the fallout from that disaster will not be resolved for another 10,000 years.
Yeah.
East Palestine, an ecologist will have a hard time telling anything happened there in about 30 years, after second growth forest has more or less fully recovered. First growth forest will take about a decade. So about halfway through that decade, a person who has no idea that anything happened there should basically not notice anything out of the ordinary relative to the surrounding area. You have to know what you're looking for. Same thing. I would say it's more like having a wildfire happen, a really bad wildfire.
I feel like this is the most misinformation about one incident I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
I'd say like in terms of like the proximity to the event, sure. There's other events that are far worse in their mischaracterizations. For instance, jet fuel can't melt steel beams, kind of stuff.
Right. I guess I do mean like in a sort of like a instant feedback, like 24-hour news cycle.
Look at the political stage that's been set for you. You have a lot of people that are looking for things to stick, as if you have to fucking swing a cat very far, things to stick on the Biden admin. And then you have people who are looking for like some way to get their money and their clout, and you have pretty high competition in that grifting market, if you will. It's a ripe prime area, and then you have the fact that there are chemicals involved and infrastructure disaster. You have Pete Buttigieg, who's in charge of this, who hasn't been at work since the beginning. So it is prime territory for people to jump in and start spewing bullshit.
Yeah,
and they have, because again, it involves all of the favorite things to pick on from the right side of things, and then same thing from the left. Now that there's rebound space, this idea that there was any nuclear material that was involved whatsoever is hilarious, because I just say prove it. Show me a sample. Show me a radiation reading.
A lot of people just have a revulsion to the word chemicals itself, right?
Well, here's the funny thing.
They always assume the worst.
There's a prize that the Royal Chemical Society in England offers, still on offer. It's £1 million for someone to come to them and present them something that is not made of chemicals. That includes, by the way, so far in terms of the attempts that have been made, the vacuum of space. So, yeah, everything's got chemicals involved. Sorry, that's the way life is. When you say chemicals and you think of it as an icky word, kind of like saying air is horrible for you.
Mm. But that is what
I'd like to
drives
live
a
an
lot
oxygen-free life,
a lot of the people's concerns just thrives around that fear of the unknown. Oh, those evil chemicals, and
that's what it is, though.
there's
Yeah.
not
It's
much
ignorance.
there's not much attempts by the media to quell that because it's too useful to their political agenda.
Well, look at where humans came from 12,000 years ago. When we didn't know what something was, we drew what we imagined it was on the wall of a cave, and then we got scared of it. Our boogeymen have gone back eons. Chemicals are no different. The fun thing about chemicals is everybody loves to have them around until they get scared of them, and then they freak out again.
To be fair, nuclear's in that category as well, right?
Sure, absolutely. And that is the safest means of energy production on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits every single category of an environmentalist checklist, except for the fact that it has nuclear in the name.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask about that because why isn't nuclear more of a thing in this country? Is it just because of the Simpsons stereotype with the big
no.
nuclear?
That is a response.
power plant?
That is a direct response to. So we had a disaster. So there was Chernobyl, and then we had 3 Mile Island, and that basically shut down the NRC's approval process for the foreseeable future until just recently. It's circa 2014 when the Savannah River site was finally approved. So I'm sure that year's wrong. Actually, it's a little. It's anyway. It's post 2010 when they finally started approving anything again. The University of Florida, for example, they're after 9/11. So they used to have a plutonium core inside the reactor, and their reactor was used for the nuclear engineering students on campus, the nuclear research, as well as providing the metastable technetium-99, so technetium-99M, which is used for medical studies at the hospital on campus. So that's got a half-life of like 8 hours, so it's only good for so long before you can't use it anymore. It's basically made and used on the same day for medical purposes. And after 9/11, so they had a 0.5 kilogram plutonium that got taken away by the Department of Homeland Security and was replaced with some uranium, which is incapable of doing the same job. So then they started having to ship down this medical isotope from somewhere up in New England area. So they now have to fly that shit in daily. Anyway, the point being here, we had these string of accidents in the in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and we shut down nuclear approvals. We Gen 3 was the last that we had. Now there's Gen 3 Plus, which is I think what's been finally approved, and there's Gen 4 reactor designs out there. Chernobyl was based on a graphite mediator. So you have these rods that are putting out a whole bunch of neutrons from the fissioning atoms, so the atoms breaking apart. And you put some stuff in the way between the rods to slow down the neutrons, and you either slow them down to achieve other reactions, other nuclear reactions. So sometimes the slow or fast neutrons might be needed, or you use the mediator to quench and stop the reactions entirely. So it's a balance. And so they were using graphite, which is a pretty good mediator, all things considered. But the major problem is it's not fluid and it is also flammable. Both of which came out to be a real pain in the ass when Chernobyl went up in flames. So
just a little, yeah.
Yeah. So every other reactor that's basically in use today is because Chernobyl hasn't shut down. By the way, you have to keep running that place, otherwise you have major problems. That's one of the reasons why it's not an over and done with thing. You can't just bury it. Things like the elephant's foot still would kill you if you got near it.
So I I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Chernobyl is
Sure.
still running today.
Yeah, so it had only one reactor went down, right?
Right.
Only one had a meltdown. So it has several running reactors. It was like what was it? Units 2, 3, and 4, or units 2 and 4 at least. But it has a couple on, like they have personnel come on site. They run the reactors. They do good. Well, you gotta hope for their grandchildren's cancer risk. They do reasonable rad control. But yeah, they're still operating it.
It's a way of life for these people, actually.
Yeah. If you wanted, so if they wanted to decommission the site, they could. But it is a power source. It's limping along, so to speak. Here, so the Zaporizhia reactor down in Ukraine. Just to give you an idea of how resilient these structures are, how much damage you have to do to them. The biggest fear that this wasn't just my opinion. This is shared. This is a couple other people also had shared this opinion with reasonable, reasonable competence. The bigger fear of Zaporizhia wasn't that Russia was going to shell these buildings and then cause a meltdown, but that somebody was going to scuttle these facilities as they were leaving instead of just hitting scram, the big red button for shutdown, and then leaving. So if somebody decided to, like, for instance, leave a bomb next to a core, hit scram, and then hit the timer button, and then skedaddle, and it blew up and contaminated the river right there, they could have blamed that on Russia.
Oh, wow.
Easily. They could have. And that would have, the problem is that would have contaminated the entirety of the sea right there. Gone right down the river, and then that sea services, it's Crimea and then Russia and then Ukraine, all in that same area. So it's a remarkably resilient technology. There are massive holes in the structure, and nothing was damaged inside. A little bit of hardware had to be retrofitted a little bit, and then the technicians were able to get everything back up online and working just fine.
To be fair, in America, the push against nuclear from the left has been since before Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island.
Yes, but that gave them that gave them a massive megaphone, and it wasn't just Chernobyl was kind of a launching pad, but they stuck the landing on 3 Mile Island.
Yeah, that's true.
That was domestic. That was on our soil, and they were finally able to say, "See, it can happen here too." And then everybody needs to shut down and say, "Okay, well, we're not going to shut them down, but we're going to stop making new ones." How about that? That was the compromise.
Yeah, that was a dumb compromise.
It was really stupid. I mean, I'm glad we're finally coming back out of that, but it's funny how many and they get them young for a reason. A lot of activists that start off being strongly and staunchly anti-nuclear finally eventually have it within them to just take a little look at what they're talking about instead of repeating someone else's talking point. When they get old enough to finally have a thought on their own, and they find out that they've been against the wrong thing. So it's a very bad thing that we've allowed ourselves to be so distracted in that way. For example, and I still can't believe we allowed this to happen at all. When Hillary Clinton and Obama approved and sold off 1/5 of our uranium mining capacity, so 1/5 of what comes out of the Uranium-1 mines and gets refined by Uranium-1 is owned by Russia, because they signed off on that deal. That uranium should be going into our reactors. Moreover, you can thank the Cold War for uranium being what was so heavily researched. Thorium is better. It's arguably better. It is the tech that people keep pushing for it. The lifter reactors is not proven to the point where I would say that's the way you should go. But as far as the old tech that it can just slot right into, and replace uranium or compete with uranium. You know, you have cooperative competition in that regard. You can use both. That's where we should be at. We should not only be running more reactors, we should be using these cheaper, more available components to put in there. Uranium's fantastic, but it's also pretty rare and hard to use.
Yeah, but to me, it seems like uranium is always the one that gets like all the sex appeal in the press
Oh yeah,
because
let's put it in bombs, man.
yeah. So that's why it always gets all the press mostly negative, I guess.
Also, we heavily researched uranium, largely because of the Cold War efforts and also the efforts with the Manhattan Project. Uranium is very good at being a more readily available fissile and destructive material. So
yeah.
I mean, thorium is more readily available, but it's harder to use in a bomb is the bigger problem with it. So the same technology that goes into refining uranium to use in a weapon is the technology you can use to refine it for energy usage. And the fact is, we were able to research all of that in one go. So it just happens to be the one that came out the winner in that little race there to fit both niches at once.
Yeah, and I mean, I've actually read regarding nuclear power that if you do it correctly, and this is the thing that everyone seems to misunderstand, the carbon footprint of nuclear energy is infinitely less, from what I understand, of like say, oh, those stupid mercury field.
Well, so you're
or something like.
You're about halfway there. So in the mathematical sense, sure, 1 is infinitely larger than 0, as is any other rational number greater than 0. But it'd be a negative footprint because you absolutely have nothing to do with you don't have to worry about anything else. As soon as you get one nuclear plant up and running and it provides electricity, that can be your dependency for building anything else. I mean, that's in a perfect world, sure. But it's as far as that goes, it effectively has a 0 carbon footprint, or negative, if you will.
No, I guess what I'm saying is, based off of the limited research I've done in the past on this,
mm-hmm.
it seems like all the quote unquote green energy solutions that we've seen over the past 10 to 15 years are actually more detrimental to the environment per se than nuclear energy as a whole.
So let me go ahead and help you out with this one. We'll tackle 2 of them real easily. There's wind and solar.
Sure.
Now, absent all of the costs prior and absent a scaled down application appropriate usage, they are both horrible for general power consumption, for general power generation. So if you get a solar panel and you use it for however long you use it, say like a 10 or 20 year period, you've done your payback period, you're making net positive cash, and you're now no longer using the energy. Beyond the sunk cost, you're no longer using the energy you would be using from the grid by using your solar cells. Sure, you can get to a point where you can make the argument that you have now become net carbon positive, if you will, or net carbon negative. You've now gotten to the point where you're using energy that is not being produced by carbon. Period. Or you can say that you've at least gotten carbon neutral. Problem is, just for perspective. We can actually just slight tangent here. For automotive vehicles, cars that have a combustion engine in them, half of their carbon footprint is in their construction. The other half is in the 10-year period they're expected to be used after they've been sold. So about half of the carbon that's released into the air is just from making the thing. making refining the metals for the engine block, all the panels, all that stuff. Count all of it up.
Yeah.
About half the carbon that's released is just from the energy intensity of making the vehicle. For electric vehicles, it's about 75% of their carbon footprint. Now you can take that two different ways depending on how you consider the usage. Lithium refining is an intensive process, which is pretty dirty in its own right. But at the end of the day, you're using electricity off the grid, which may or may not be coming from a carbon source. But the assumption right now is that it's coming from a carbon source, more or less. They use the industry averaging for how much carbon that each watt hour coming in represents, but it's basically from a carbon source. So that kind of weighting there, the electric vehicles may or may not be a better option in that sense. Well, now we can go back and say, okay, let's talk about how we make these devices for renewable energy sources. So for solar cells, how do they get the silicon to make the solar cell? Well, they take a bunch of really pure sand, silicon dioxide, and they mix it with coal, carbon, and then they burn off all the oxygen as CO2. So solar cells have a massive carbon footprint when they're made. And you have to get past all of that sunk cost before you can start saying, okay, now I'm carbon neutral or what have you. So while solar is fantastic in certain applications, for instance, when you're far away from grid source and you don't have the capital or the regulatory approval to use nuclear for a small modular reactor, just as an example, then sure, you have these niche applications where it makes sense to use solar or wind. For wind, the layup process itself uses epoxy and glass or carbon fiber. So that's a labor-intensive process more than it is an energy-intensive process. Now, what was sold to the American people back in the 80s for wind farms was that they would not only be cheaper, which was done through government subsidies, so that was already a strike against them, but they'd also be easier to maintain, and they would last for like 25 years. The blades, anyway. So the maintenance scheduling is supposed to be cheaper because the blades are supposed to last for a very long time. And the problem was that particulates in the air will shred the leading surface of these blades. And these blades are not recyclable. You've probably seen a couple of those pictures of a tiny little tractor plowing dirt over these massive blades in the ground.
Yeah.
Real. That's what you have to do with, so here's the thing. You can kind of recycle the materials, but it is way cheaper just to bury them and make new ones. So that's what they do. And it turns out that the repair schedule on these, the maintenance schedule it's not 25 years for the blades to be replaced. It's about 5 years. That's bad. That's 5 times the cost you thought you were going to be having. But the maintenance schedule to evaluate whether or not the blades are even in need of repair has to happen at least that much more frequently as well. So not only are these not only need more personnel, they need to be going to these devices, shutting them down, and evaluating them more than 5 times as often as was promised. So the cost breaking even, I don't know where the number is, but it's somewhere between 25 and 5 years for a service life on a blade, and we've clearly went way past that. So it is a net negative cost. It is expensive to run these, and we're not gaining anything in terms of efficiency of cost.
Well, not to mention, I mean, it's pretty well known now, but I mean,
sure.
When I was in junior high, that was when An Inconvenient Truth came out, and
right.
we were all forced to watch it. And one of the things that was really pushed in that piece of shit propaganda piece was wind power, and then it came out later that the turbines were responsible for like massive bird deaths too.
There's a few species that are they've had to decommission a few farms
Oh
due to
yeah.
the flight paths of a couple of different species of bird that were driven towards extinction because of because of these wind farms.
Well,
It
the
kills
Martha's
thousands
Vineyard
of them.
Democrats have fought with the state of Massachusetts for years out here about a wind farm because they think it's an eyesore and bad for birds. But it's literally like Obama, John Kerry, and like those people that push this stuff. They
Yeah.
literally don't want it in their backyard.
Well, so this is why you have to watch what they do, not what they say. They say that they want wind farms and that the coasts are going to be flooded in 5 years, and then they buy, $50 million houses on the coast and say, "I don't want to see the wind farm." Well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's going to be your backyard, asshole. I'm sorry.
Rules for thee, but not for me, right?
I mean, like, feel like this, like if the global warming side of things, if that's going to erase the coasts of Miami, if Miami Beach is going to disappear in 10, 15 years due to our current behavior, every single one of those hotel owners, every single one of those condo owners would be lobbying Congress right now, demanding immediate relief for what's going on. And the fact is that there is the scientific question, scientific debate doesn't end. That's what science is a long debate.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as consensus in that regard. Scientific consensus involves a long-standing argument that has not been concluded but has been pretty well argued.
It's like the sun being the center of the solar system is a consensus. Things like that, right?
Well, you see, that's the thing is they would say in the day, of Galileo when he was imprisoned in his house, the consensus at the time was that the sun, the heliocentric theory was true.
Right.
Aristotle pushing that and then driving him into house arrest was justified on that basis. That he was spreading misinformation, if you will, and therefore had to be corrected by Dr. Aristotle.
It's almost like there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Oh, that's brilliant.
Or as Owen Benjamin likes to put it, Aristotle was practicing wizardry or something like that. But
I mean, like, here's the thing: is Aristotelian logic is fairly good. If you're going to go through a philosophy major, you're going to be spending a lot of time bowing down to Aristotle. He wasn't exactly a dumb guy, but when he got something wrong, he really got it wrong.
Yeah, so did Charles Darwin, and yet like all the lefties still worship the fuck out of him.
Sure. I mean, the funny thing about Darwin is his survival of the fittest as a concept is fun because it's really not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the fit enough. And that there's a gap between fit enough and fittest, and that gap is an important buffer that allows genetic diversity to exist. If it was survival of the fittest, then every time a calamity happened, all the fittests would suddenly not be fit anymore, and we wouldn't have anybody left.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that buffer is hugely important for the survival of life.
Genetics and evolution can't just exist on that level of min-maxing, right? By definition.
I mean, it's also a multivariable optimization problem, which means you can have minima that are directed in opposite and opposing matrices. So things like having a saddle shape and then saying find the minimum and ending up in that metastable point in the middle. So you have these kind of complications to the playing field, so to speak. It's not flat or level in any sense.
Yeah, well, this is why I often bring up the theory of human action with people in regards to like more politics than originally intended by Mises to be a sort of an economics theory. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it's a very common thing in computer software, or especially video games, right? Where as soon as it is predictable, but yet unpredictable, that somebody's going to come in, break the game somehow for their advantage, cheat, duplicate, whatever, do something. And of course, then the devs have to find all these holes and plug them.
Diablo 2 versus, the Diablo 2 players versus all of BattleNet sensors.
Yeah, and that's on every level of life, man. Like you can't predict all of that kind of behavior that people have, which is why you can't centrally plan things. And I actually feel like libertarians who talk about this theory of human action actually do it a disservice, because they only apply it to economics. But I think it applies very much. It's almost a law of like sociology, if you think about it, is that humans are going to behave in ways that we just can't predict or account for ahead of time, and we have to react to later.
Well, so, and this is not to fall through on the mockery, the well-justified mockery from Robin Williams onto Rumsfeld. But you have your known knowns, you have your known unknowns, and you have your unknown unknowns.
Right.
So you have those things that you can account for and can control. You have things that you know that you don't know, and then you have things that are going to come out of middle of frickin' nowhere and wipe you out, basically. You have your black swan kind of stuff. The things that you have no idea that's going to be a problem, but then suddenly there it is. So, like, there's things that you can definitely control, and those are what you should be concerned yourself about in general. You have things that you don't know, and so you should be planning for how those known unknowns might impact your ability to control what you do know about. And then you have stuff that's going to just come along and flip the chessboard.
Well, and going back to this whole train thing, it seems like that's what a lot of this, fear-mongering BS on both sides.
Sure.
It is, right? It's knowing it's.
Well, I'd say there's a knowledge gap there.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what the thing that they should be focusing on is that these were known knowns that were a problem.
Yeah.
And the company's unwillingness to do things like sufficient upkeep to maintain the bearings and all of the wheels on their cars, traveling down the track containing hazardous materials, and they are hazardous. Despite, doesn't matter how long they're hazardous, while they're in that tank and traveling down the rail, they are hazardous. And the fact that they decided to cut corners in that regard, they cheaped out, led to basically ruining a town for at least a couple of years. Here's the thing is, I think the water's going to be, in my intuition here, is that the water's safe. I think that people should be tested. I think that it is absolutely 100% their right, and it is our responsibility as a country to coddle them in this way. That it should be their right to demand that water is tested damn near hourly to make sure nothing is coming out of the ground that will harm them. And I can tell you that all the monomers reacted away. It's all gone. Like, it's never coming back. It's all gone. The products that come out of that, the short chain oligomers, monomer is a single unit in a polymer. And so very, very short polymers are called short chain oligomers. And so that's, anywhere between like 2 and 8 units long, or 2 and 20 units long. We're talking pretty short polymer here. So barely enough to be called a polymer in the first place. That kind of level stuff is still mobile, but bacteria and other microflora, microfauna love to munch that stuff up. So it will be neutralized completely. That's the good news. When that happens is kind of up for debate, but my intuition is that it'll happen before the diffusion bound reaches the groundwater. Artesian wells start at 80 feet and go down to like 120 feet. And if that's a major water source besides the upstream water, which is coming downriver to their facilities, if their major sources of water that they have available are basically well water or upstream water sources, their water's good. The ground around their homes, especially near the accident site, probably not so good right now. the stuff going downriver is all being diluted to irrelevance, which is great news. The volume of the river is so much larger than the volume of stuff that got dumped into it. The other thing people weren't really recognizing here is that there was an oil slick because 2 tankers full of lube oil drained out. And for whatever reason, people were harping on the stuff that was actually resolved, the vinyl chloride. The lube oil is going to stick around longer. That's not a monomer, that's a polymer. It's while it might be subjective, it might be subjected to UV radiation and bacterial degradation. It's going to be broken down over time. It takes a lot longer to break that stuff down in the environment.
Yeah,
this is why an oil spill is bad.
Yeah, you get even little oil slicks in like the local pond, and that shit will stick around way, way, way longer than you ever imagine. It's pretty much
months will be about what I expect for that.
Yeah, but it's also not the end of the world. I saw a lot of videos like freaking out about it. They didn't even realize what it was. There's just so much there's so many known knowns, as you said, that are unknown to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's getting mixed in with all this speculation, and of course, like building everything up is also sexy too if you're trying to clickbait and sell people on a on a narrative.
This is one of those things to do it with. And I mean, for instance, another great one, and I'm glad that there hasn't anywhere near as much hype, let alone misinformation blowing out around it. But the truck that tipped over on the highway that had a tank full of nitric acid in it, which immediately started going up. So nitric acid is an oxidizing acid. So not only does the acid part of it cause problems by just attacking stuff by its pH, but the nitrate ion will oxidize other materials. It'll give up. It'll basically rip electrons. So it'll create nitric oxide gas, so NO2, and it'll ruin whatever it touches, basically. I mean, I don't want to make it sound way worse than it is, but it is a pretty savage acid when it comes to this.
No, but it does have all kinds of industrial purposes. I was going to say, I've used it.
It's really important stuff.
Like a lot of people use it in industrial uses all the time.
It's fairly safe when you transport it right. But just put it like this: like it's not, for one thing,
gnarly
misconception.
It's gnarly as fuck when it hits the ground or something like that.
Right.
But it's not like the end of the world kind of thing.
So for one thing, nitric acid is not like something that has been nitrated, which would be something more akin to an explosive. Nitric acid by itself is not an explosive. It's also transported as a solution in water, so it's not that dangerous on its own like that.
It mostly just bubbles and hisses, right?
Yeah,
but it burns through shit really good.
Right. So there's going to be probably about a 40-foot by 100-foot section of ground where that truck landed, which is going to have a real hard time growing anything for a few months.
Yeah.
It's
good thing it's a highway.
Anything that does grow right there is probably going to have a bunch of nitrated stuff in it, which is going to be basically just imagine it's growing cancer for you. So don't eat it. I wouldn't let a cow graze there for a little while. But yeah, that's going to be the end of it. The rains, it'll soak in. I mean, the nitrates are also fertilizer, so eventually something will grow there very, very well. I would give it a few months and then plant a tree. That tree will grow very, very tall and strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. But don't trust the government.
No, I mean, here's the thing: the government's proven that it is willing to lie for the dumbest reasons.
Yes.
For a very long time and very often.
Not even good reasons, just completely idiotic reasons.
It almost always boils down to, well, this guy thought it was a great idea, but it turns out he was lied to by this guy who wanted to get the grant money, and therefore it was embarrassing. So all these people had to be put in the dark, and also F you for paying taxes.
Yeah, and also pay more taxes.
And also pay more of them, yes. I mean, the men who see, what was it? The Men Who Watch Goats, was that the name of the movie? The one about, so that was actually a real experiment that they did, was to have people, the idea that they could have psychokinesis. They tested that as well as telepathy. So the idea that people might be able to predict, say the next card in a deck, kind of thing. Now, while it's an interesting experiment. So here's the first thing: you go to Feynman's axiom on this one. If your theory doesn't agree with experiment, then the theory is garbage. Experiment is king. Check it with an observation. So I don't blame somebody for saying, okay, why don't we just do it? Let's see if somebody can predict the next card in a deck better than chance. Which obviously failed, by the way. Nobody was able to predict the next card better than chance. But how much money you're going to pay for that out of a government budget? I mean, imagine that was something where they did that against somebody's will or without them knowing, like, say, I don't know, the Tuskegee syphilis issue, which was pretty fucking damning.
Yeah.
That's one I brought up a lot, when there was a lot of like talk of vaccine hesitancy among particularly the black population in America. It's like, well, no shit, Sherlock. The last time you gave them a vaccine, it gave like half of them syphilis.
Yeah, but then you have people like Kamala coming out. And
that's in living memory.
Then you have people like Kamala coming out and using that in a partisan manner only because it's Trump that was pushing the vaccine so hard. Kamala comes out and for months says, we're not going to take it like Tuskegee. And then as soon as Biden shows up on the scene and, around October-ish, the whole narrative flips. The whole messaging stops. Kamala is no longer anti-vax.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is when my old co-host Apex and I, we brought up the Tuskegee Airmen thing, and that was actually one of the videos that got struck on my old YouTube channel, was for quote unquote medical misinformation.
So we're already beyond the pale tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, just
thank you for joining us over here on Odyssey, Rumble, and everywhere else, where we can talk about some things that are not even all that fucking edgy, but whatever.
So get this. I mean, if we're on that topic, and I don't mean to pull your airtime for the show, another show I'm on.
No.
I do a show with Evan
problem.
and Steve. So the Fake Untitled podcast, and
which is my favorite podcast, by the way, to anybody that cares about that endorsement.
Come on, Sam's got to be a close second.
Well, now this is taking over the spot, right? And we've merged everything.
I mean, I'd love to have Sam on that one too. Like we got struck down on YouTube, and we were right. So we've been doing our show over there since late 2020, and so clearly, so Evan basically came to me and said, "Hey, want to help me out with a show? I mean, I've known you for years. Why don't you just come and at least we'll talk about this COVID shit. You can at least go over how to keep yourself safe. What some ideas for where things are going." And, Evan, Steve, and I, so Steve is a nuclear engineer, but also is formally trained as a chemical engineer. And then Evan is more of a lay person. So we got a spread spectrum of depth on our topics, so to speak.
As well as personalities, which is
as well as personality.
Yeah. If you're into nerd shit, it's literally the best podcast out there, hands down.
So we've been right about the stuff we talk about because so Steve and I will disagree a lot on things, and we have our own opinions,
just a little
opinions on things. But the thing that we make sure to do on that show, at the very minimum, when we start talking on a subject, is to cover the facts that we agree on, because facts should not be different between two people with differing opinions. If you can't agree on the facts of the matter, then your opinions really don't matter. So I mean, I don't think they matter terribly elsewise, but the idea there is that when we argue, we say, okay, we know all of this stuff to be true. Here's what I take from it, and this is why what you're taking from it is garbage, and you should go die in a fire.
So, two things. I have to interrupt real quick. Hey, Vickers, come over and watch here. We are far more entertaining than the than the fat hog. Why don't you come over here and watch something entertaining, Boomer? I'm gonna spam him the link.
Dude, now I'll say this:
until
it's one thing we do on the other podcasts is we tend to steer away from the personality drama because that bogs people
Yeah.
down so much.
Yeah, no.
But you're absolutely right. Far more entertaining to do this.
Yeah, no. So do I. I mean, I don't really cover any of the e-drama here, except when the e-drama people
When they follow
worm their
you,
worm their way into politics and
right?
fuck. The fact that these people then got involved in politics is just irritating. But that's all
it's
another
a
thing.
beautiful foil. It
Yeah.
is such a fantastic precision bomb of controlled opposition on basically every front you can get from the ass end of the horseshoe.
Yep.
And then some.
Yeah. And then, so I was going to mention to you that,
and then
we
a
talked
power
about YouTube.
chat money laundering scam, right? And all this other fucking crap that they're up to.
Yeah. I was going to mention that the YouTube thing where you got struck and so on. Like so I made the fun choice of mocking a certain child groomer named Lucas. And suddenly some other stuff that we'd already been having some issues with, the whole medical misinformation thing. We got in a couple strikes from that, but then we got other strikes that came in, and we had those resolved. We had other strikes that came in curiously close to some other untoward mockery that I had been conducting on my ship posting elsewhere, and suddenly some other stuff on YouTube was getting flagged, so we had to actually drop all our videos from YouTube. We had private them for a while, and we're largely on Odyssey right now. When we make the podcast, we publish it out to Anchor, and it goes everywhere. But the actual live stuff is all on Odyssey.
What very cool. I have to ask, what is like the biggest like pet peeve stereotype about like chemicals and whatnot that you've seen in like movies and entertainment that you just roll your eyes at?
There's so many of them.
I imagine there's got to be a few. Yeah.
So the idea, for instance, this isn't like a pet peeve, but it's just like one of those things that you notice. Like if someone's working with an acid, the strength of the acid is never going to be requisite. You just assume that they are making the assumption for audience sake that it is a strong acid when they're making it seem like it's the destructive bubbling goo that will ruin everything. But the fact that stuff like sulfuric acid, for example, will instantly start destroying someone's skin, which, by the way, you have like a solid minute to get your hand underwater. Do not wait a minute, but like you have a minute to do it.
It's not so bad. I had a coworker burn his hand on some nitric acid one time.
Yeah,
and it was a little tiny drop. He had like skin discoloration. He got all fucked up in that one little area.
It hurts a little bit, but
he
like,
lived.
At the end of the day, yeah, like sulfuric acid takes a while to get through the keratin layers of your skin. Sorry, not the keratin, the surface layers of your skin. Keratin, it will attack even slower. That's your fingernails and hair. But those dead layers of skin cells do a bang up job keeping stuff like sulfuric acid out. And so concentrated sulfuric acid, which is used all the time as a lubricant for your ground glass joints and your laboratory setups, like that, you can work with that stuff. I mean, you should use gloves, but you can work with your bare hands. And if you get any on you, just put your hands into the sink. Hydrochloric acid is also hyped up. That one's not bad at all. But anyway, that instantaneously destroying stuff, that's kind of silly. I mean, the liquid nitrogen instantly freezing everything it touches, kind of silly. Light and frost effect exists.
But liquid nitrogen is fun to play with, to be fair.
It's massive. So in my lab for a while, the stuff I was doing, so we had a 200 liter high. So when we moved buildings, we ended up getting a high pressure 200 liter dewar. So one of those tanks that's about up to your collarbone, and about if you touch your fingers together in front of you in a hoop, it's about that big around. and it's about up to your collarbone in height. So that's a 200-liter Dewar. It's a big tank, insulated tank, and we had a high pressure one for liquid nitrogen. And I don't know why we got it that way. We only needed low pressure in the lab. But one of the things I had to do, just about every day going in, so I was a safety guy in the lab, is purge the tank because a lot of these uses were low pressure, so we needed the stuff at ambient pressure, which is very cold inside. So because it's basically at boiling point inside the tank, you can imagine equating pressure and temperature in this way. It follows a curve. So ambient pressure is around 77 Kelvin-ish inside, minus 196 C. It's very cold. So I had to go ahead and purge the tank and then pull out a liter of liquid nitrogen at least from the tap to clear out any water crystals that might fall in while it's purging out the air or purging out the dry nitrogen gas.
Oh my God! So liquid nitrogen is basically a waste byproduct. That is too much fun for one man to be in charge of. God damn it!
So every morning for a couple of years, I had to go in and do that. And so I put video. There's a slew of videos on my YouTube channel, on my personal one.
I bet there is.
I mean, just because I at a certain point, I'm like, I gotta show some of this shit to my friends. So I put it into a tray. I also did cryofractures for some SEM microscopy, so scanning electron microscopy. And so to do cryofractures, you pour out your liquid nitrogen. So I would take this opportunity to do that as well. But the tin that I would put it in is basically like a little, like one of those little bread loaf baking tins, except it's made out of steel. So it's a lab tray. So it's shaped the same as the bakeware, but it's not bakeware. So because it's a thin metal wall, of course, it starts condensing the atmosphere on the sides of it, which drips off the bottom and skitters around inside the lab hood. So I just have video of that happening, and then also, because I have it, may as well, if you pour liquid nitrogen into your generic red Solo cup and leave it out on the table. Insulated is smarter than not, but you can do it either way. Oxygen will condense from the atmosphere into it, and nitrogen will boil off. So if you let it sit there for a while and you come back when you got about an inch of it or half inch of it left, it'll be very pale blue because it's got condensed oxygen inside. So there's all kinds of fun stuff that I got to play with as I was doing that. But yeah, so a couple of years I had to purge out about 1 liter or 2 liters. And I used a thermos. If I brought a thermos in from home and slapped a label on it.
God damn
it. That was the lab Dewar for purging.
That's amazing.
I miss it now. It is so much fun. Here's the thing: is you can go down to the hardware store. You can go down to the if your town is a local welding supply. Now you can't bring in an uncertified Dewar or a Dewar in poor condition or a thermos, because the thermos becomes a bomb. Even if you've shown them that you have broken it so it cannot contain pressure anymore, so that it can't seal, they're not allowed to do it. Plus, they also won't sell you like less than 10 liters of nitrogen anyway. But they have liquid nitrogen on site at a welding supply store. Welding supply stores. They have other gases too, but nitrogen's the fun one.
We used to have it on site. I worked at high-tech manufacturing. We use it for purging out some of the wafers. I forget the containers we grew the wafers in the deep manufacturing
reactor vessels.
Yeah. And so we had a ton of it, but like it wasn't a waste product, it was a resource. That's why I was like, oh, if it was a waste product, I would have a lot of fun with that actually.
Best part about the way that we had it set up at our building, there's a massive tank of liquid nitrogen out back. And all you had to have was the key to the padlock. And you go in there and fill up your tank and you bring it back up to your lab. Or you go down there and you fill up your thermos or whatever and you bring it back to your lab. So, I mean, it takes so much nitrogen. It's not like that much, but it takes a decent amount of nitrogen to purge out your line and chill it down before you can fill up a tank or a Dewar. That you don't just like go down there for a little 2 liter thermos of it. 200 liter tank you're wasting maybe 5 or 6 liters of nitrogen to get that filled up. But if you're going down there and wasting like 6 liters of nitrogen on a 2-liter thermos, that's waste. But again, you just go down, like there's no metering, no like logging of that, none of that. It's just a building resource. So like, it wasn't even something we had to compete with other labs because we got it topped up by air gas like every week or so. Which is always fun to watch. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess kind of bringing this all back around.
Yeah.
Around though, to the whole thing with the trains and whatnot. None of these chemicals are really going to do long-term damage to the environment.
Not really, no.
Is what we're getting at.
No, and so here's the thing: the stuff that was pretty bad. So the thing that people should have been most worried about were the people that were exposed. So these monomers are very reactive. Just to keep that in mind, they go away quickly. The stuff they turn into isn't particularly nice, but it's a heck of a lot less dangerous than the monomer itself. And the stuff that it turns into similarly disappears pretty quickly. The people who were exposed when the accident happened, in the immediate aftermath of the accident, did not have the benefit of a large amount of time to pass before the monomer got to them. It was a direct exposure to the chemical, which is hazardous, the vinyl chloride and the 3 other monomers and the solvents and so on that are involved. So those people are the people who should be of most concern. They are the ones who had an air exposure, a volatiles exposure, and so they are going to have to go to the doctor and get evaluated for a while. The groundwater thing, I'd say that's a little more kind of a toss-up. I still think that it's going to be just fine. But the stuff that reacts away into is fine. And it goes away, it's into the environment and gone. The environment will come back. The environment will rebound. The wildlife will come back. The trees that are dead, probably going to want to cut those down to keep them from falling on people's houses. It's just like after any wildfire, they're going to they'll dry out a bit, or they'll just rot. But they'll eventually they're coming down. A lot of the stuff that was most dangerous got taken care of on site. Not in the best way, but in basically the best way that they had available to them at the time. So they drained out the tanks that they could into a common pit and lit it on fire and got rid of it. And the biggest dangerous product to come out of that was hydrochloric acid. So 1 out of every 4 carbons that was involved in vinyl chloride is 1 out of every 4 hydrogens is replaced with a chlorine. So your H2O becomes an HCl. In some events or some cases. So that stuff will rain down, but that's going to effectively be a mild infrastructure cost more than it is a human or wildlife cost because it's distributed over such a large area.
Right.
That you're getting basically the mild acid rain that they warned everybody about in the 90s, but never happened. So if you have open exposed metal surfaces where those clouds pass by, you might check for some pitting on the metal, but then again, it's a one and done event. You're not getting that rain coming back and burning more stuff. It's just like it creates sites for rust to begin, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but the dirt's fine. It's got buffer. It's fine.
Yeah, we're not gonna have like perpetual nuclear rain or nuclear winter because of any of this.
Not in the slightest.
Stuff.
So speaking on the nuclear thing, and you mentioned pet peeves earlier, the fire at Oak Ridge. So I've been to that site before to check out their 3D printing areas. Their big area manufacturing printers, the BAM printer. And they have that nuclear processing stuff on site there. The Y2 building or Y12 building, whatever it is, it's a building from 1945 that they used to do nuclear processing in, and most of the functions have been already transferred to other buildings, and they're building a new building to take over the rest of it. So it's basically not doing a whole lot. So they had a fire go up in a fume hood, and uranium metal was involved, which means gram quantities or milligram quantities. So that means like a little glass vial was sitting inside a fume hood nearby the fire or in the hood that had the fire start. They quenched the fire. The shelter in place was lifted at 11:30 a.m. and people were back to work by 1 p.m. after the lunch break. That fire, which was in a uranium processing facility, turned into, in headlines, a uranium fire. That is a pet peeve.
Right.
Because it was not a uranium fire, it was a fire in a building. The building had uranium processing in it. And there were no rad leaks. They checked air everywhere. They checked air around the damn fire site. No radiation leaks. So all that is, if anyone's saying that's happening, it's bunk. It's absolutely not happening.
Yeah, well, people are saying, I mean, people are saying lots of things about, the whole, Ohio thing, and it might be satire, but I mean, and it probably is, but these days you can't tell. I mean, I've seen people on Twitter saying that this is literally going to lead to like a zombie apocalypse, which probably isn't true.
Well, that's definitely true. 100% confirmed.
If that did happen, it would be hilarious.
You know how it's going to turn into that. They're going to show up at the polls without a brain, and they're going to press the box with a D next to it. And they're going to say, Orange man bad.
Yeah.
God. Fucking zombies, really? But yeah, so a pet peeve is when you have, so like I can understand that a layperson is not going to have the best understanding of things when it comes to, so for instance, this East Palestine disaster. Shit happens where people aren't going to have the best understanding. For instance, I would have been more alarmed about the 2 tanks of oil that were allowed to escape into the river than I would be about the chemicals that were very reactive that would go away quickly and then were also taken care of promptly. The stuff that was allowed to just leave, that was what I was kind of annoyed with. But yeah. I also know that I have good knowledge about what's going to happen to all the substances that left the area. A person who doesn't have that knowledge is going to look and see what the kind of worst stuff is there, and vinyl chloride's pretty nasty. So obviously, the very reactive, very irritating to your membranes carcinogen is going to be something that and endocrine disruptor is going to be something that people are going to freak out about. I get it. And so that doesn't bother me nearly as much as when you have a fundamental, basic, logical fuck up, like the uranium fire coming out of fire that involved uranium somewhere. It's disturbingly frequent that happens. So people freaking out about vinyl chloride, I get it. And then when people it's a little irritating when someone changes vinyl chloride to polyvinyl chloride when they're talking about it. It's PVC is the pipes in your home. So that's if that stuff was carcinogenic monomer, that'd be really bad.
Well, vinyl chloride is one of those things that, again, sounds sexy, right? Compared to, say, crude oil, or something like that. That's doing more damage to the rivers.
Well, sure. I mean, for instance, keep in mind they focused on the vinyl chloride because there were 5 tankers of it versus the other 3 monomers, each of which had there was 2 tankers of the butyl, whatever it was, and then there was 1 tanker of each of the other 2. Yeah. And then there was the 1 tanker that had the solvent that's pretty commonly used for this stuff. So those other tankers aren't mentioned. Those other substances aren't really mentioned. And I'd say that those other substances, the acrylates, are nastier than vinyl chloride. as far as human contact goes. So it just was kind of the one, I think, because people vaguely have an idea that vinyl chloride is somehow related because they've heard that PVC is polyvinyl chloride maybe once in a life. That one probably stuck out a little more. But yeah, the layperson misinterpreting more industry specific stuff I don't get as annoyed with so much as the very basic stuff being bungled because a journo doesn't have the ability to read straight.
Well, that happens a lot on a lot of
Very frequently.
things.
And then misinterpreting and just like reading the abstract to a paper and then misinterpreting it and then putting out statements in media that completely are contradicted by the body of the paper. That's another one. Something on the order of scientist discovers moon made of cheese, and then maybe someone colloquially described the porous structure of a rock as being like Swiss cheese. Things like that, things that silly happen. Not that scientists are immune to it. You have people like Thunderfoot, who has done this before. Read an abstract, decided he was correct, and then had he reread the abstract slower, might have recognized that he was fundamentally incorrect with what he was saying. I believe the one that I'm thinking of right now is the one where a research group came up with a material that was capable of pulling water out of the air on the order of liters per day. Very cool device. And Thunderfoot totally blew it on that episode of his. Then again, he has like 70 or 80 videos on solar roadways.
Yeah.
It's just a meme at this point.
I've seen him go down like several rabbit holes on a lot of this.
Well, he was right about the solar roadways, and probably about 10 videos in, he should have stopped because you're beating a dead horse. He just keeps going.
Yeah. But that's also kind of how some of those science YouTubers are, I've noticed. They latch onto one specific thing and then
so you need to watch more science YouTubers, not a sensationalist YouTuber like him. So there is a slew of fantastic chemistry YouTubers that are worth watching. Just because, so a lot of people will, I've done a little bit of this, but usually my videos are just like an hour of me fucking around, and then maybe I'll put some chiptunes over it. But other people will go through the reactions and show all the clean steps and so on. So Nile Red's a great one. But there is a ton of them out there. I can rattle them off later for you if you want.
Yeah. Kind of shifting topics. We've been hearing off and on about the war in Ukraine possibly becoming like chemical warfare, or maybe even nuclear. Do you think there's any validity to that at this point? And if so, how would that?
So I don't think that Putin. He's not going to go chemical. So a lot of chemical warfare is banned by Geneva Convention, and signatory or not for the nations involved. Pretty much everybody judges combat by that standard at this point. That's, again, regardless of whether or not a country's a signatory, people will judge a country by whether or not they have done something like use chemical weapons, which the U.S. will happily do because we're the U.S. So I don't think Putin is going to go that route. So Ukraine is not. So to begin with here, the way that chemical warfare kind of came about was during trench warfare. And so we knew that people were going to be in a specific location for a prolonged period of time. So they were not mobile combatants. And so we knew where they're going to be. We knew that they were in a position that was hard to get a person in place to cause damage. So we need to put something else there to cause damage instead. And we can't just like lob explosives in because that's not going to work. So what we did instead was we dumped chlorine gas on the ground, and we allowed that to, because it sinks in air, it's heavier. We allowed that to go right over the edge of their trenches and fall in and choke them all to death. So imagine dying by swallowing your own fluids because your lungs are effectively bleeding out from all the acid that's just developed inside them.
Yeah,
so,
well,
nasty way to go, and but it was effective. And the point is that the chemical warfare relies on that kind of asymmetric advantage in knowing where your enemy is and how vulnerable they are to the specific agent you're putting in. So that whole entire aspect of warfare escalated very quickly and ratcheted up, so that we have very good countermeasures for most of the stuff that's used. And I mean, the technology that came back to the civilian population is fantastic. We have all these different pesticides now, which are all basically nerve agents. Just by the way, organophosphates are horrible for the human body. But again, we don't have that necessarily in urban combat, which is what a lot of what's going on in Ukraine is. So, for instance, in Iraq and Iraq and Afghanistan, we had a lot of urban combat, more so than we had line combat or field combat, if you will, or entrenched static positions where we had combat like that. It's a lot of getting in between buildings and finding your target and then taking it. I mean, if you have a mass action moving forward of tanks and military personnel, that's still not trench warfare, which is where chemical warfare is most effective. So things like using titanium tetrachloride so titanium chloride to make a smoke wall is a naval strategy. And while that does create hydrochloric acid, the titanium dioxide making a smoke screen is the more important part, and that's not considered chemical warfare, just as an example. But we still use that. But something like white phosphorus in a warhead is considered cruel and unusual, and the way that it causes damage is pretty damn nasty. So it burns its way into you, and it burns based on the fluid inside you, because water is a source for that fire. It's an oxidizer. So that fire does not go out by putting water on it. Very nasty stuff. If you put water on it and it does go out, then you open it up to any oxygen again, and it attaches right back on fire. So, and it's sticky.
Yeah.
It's like napalm sticky.
Well, so far, I mean, everything in the Ukraine is mostly being done via drone warfare. There's very little, there's very little, close quarters combat.
Right. So the nuclear question, Putin is pretty well strung up on the mutually assured destruction angle. When it comes to other nation states, I wouldn't put it past him to nuke something in Ukraine if he felt the need to, and he felt somehow that was going to advance his strategy with Ukraine. He does not want to trigger NATO. The NATO issue on Russia has been, it's like one of those ratcheting things again. Basically, Russia decides that it's going to be aggressive, and then NATO extends its net a little further, and then Russia backs off and gets upset about it for a while. Then Russia decides it's going to move forward again. NATO says, F you, and then another country that's near Russia goes, hey, I want to be in NATO, and then Russia backs off and gets upset again. So basically, Putin's a lot of this is saber rattling, which is good, because if it wasn't saber rattling, it'd be a really bad day. But again, we have an idiot in office who can't pronounce his own name, and so that is a problem when we have somebody who can pronounce his own name and is easily offended on the other side of the line.
And Already at least doesn't seem to know what his name is half the time either. And just to clarify for the audience, I'm not necessarily saying I think there's going to be nuclear war. The reason why I asked the question is because just yesterday I saw that Zelensky is saying we might have to send American troops, over to Ukraine now, which I think is a bad idea myself personally.
The video that was popularly passed around from Zelensky saying that Americans are going to have to send their sons and daughters to die there just like Ukrainians, that was actually cut short out of context. Now, the context doesn't make it a lot better because this guy's been saying the same kind of ransom-based speech, if you will, the whole time, which is that it basically is prefaced in a manner of if the Ukraine falls and we lose, thereafter the U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters to die in the Ukraine just like we have. So, again, the context doesn't make it a whole lot better, but I 100% agree. Like, if it was just him saying, you guys got to send your troops in, I would have told him to F off. But, like, I'd still say the same thing where he's threatening that like a mob boss. It's like, look, man, we gave you $100 billion, over $100 billion, and you've squandered it in 1 year. Now, the U.S. didn't do a whole lot better in Iraq and Afghanistan over 20 years, mind you. In 1 year, we spent more than that, sure, but we also were effective, whereas Ukraine is not. I mean, keep in mind, like they've been able to hold kind of their own, but they've also been getting everything they've been using on the field effectively for free. The money that's going in is basically returned right back in. This is where it's inflating our economy for a reason. A lot of that money stays in the U.S. paying for stuff we send over there to use in the war. And then some of that money is then cycled back through via Ukraine into the EU for NATO expenses. So weaponry, ammunition, and training or just hardware. So we haven't sent any. We have intelligence assets on the ground. We definitely have. So this, for instance, why Biden was able to visit in Ukraine in the first place. We have intelligence assets on the ground. We have military assets on the ground for scouting and also for intelligence relaying and security services. And we've also got supply line. I'm guarantee we've got people in there that are guarding supply lines. And the funny thing is, we talk about not having our troops on the ground. The vast majority of the people that we had sticking it out over there in Iraq and Afghanistan were mercenaries. And those are not U.S. troops. So when we say we haven't sent any U.S. troops into Ukraine, that would not cover if someone had made an executive action, secret or not, to send in mercenaries. That doesn't even have to be handled via the commander-in-chief. That's something that a general can do. So while it should be handled by the commander-in-chief because it involves foreign affairs, if we already have a solid policy position on it, then commander-in-chief doesn't have to say anything, and it's kind of like when the bill sits on the president's office for a whole week and then expires. That's a pocket veto. This is like a pocket military action, is where you don't have, if you have a clear policy position, you just let your general do something. The president didn't command mercenaries to be sent in on contract. It just happened. So while I'm not saying we have a large amount of mercenaries in there, I bet you we've got people either geared up on the sidelines waiting for their turn so that we just kind of suddenly appear there like we did with Iraq.
Yeah.
Or we've, so we've probably got people that are staged there ready to go, again, like saber rattling. Or we've got we've got assets already in place. And again, that's why Biden was able to land there safely. We already had security assets and intelligence assets. And again, like I said, it's probably our mercenaries that are probably covering supply lines from the NATO side of the situation out to where the front is. So that's probably why Putin hasn't been able to kind of double envelop on the front line and take another chunk. It's probably been because the sides have been guarded out pretty well and the supply lines are secured.
Well, let me just say this, and hopefully
it's going to become line of actual control.
Just froze.
Oh, we're still good?
Yeah.
Okay. It's got to be like a line of
I
actual control. and not like so like China and India, they have where their border dispute is. They have a de facto border called the Line of Actual Control, the LAC. And I bet you that something like that is going to develop around the Zaporizhia River, because that's basically where Putin's been stalled out. And he's going to take those two new regions, Donetsk and Luhansk. He's going to say these are now territories that are independent, like with Crimea. And then soon enough, he's going to do the same thing that he's basically doing with Belarus, where they're going to envelop into the Federation. So Russia's empire is going to expand. So if you didn't know, that's happening by 2030. Belarus will become part of Russia.
Yeah,
So
I did.
Same thing will happen with Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just checking some of the comments here. Yeah, okay. Generally, I mean, like I said, the reason why I brought up the whole nuclear angle is because we keep hearing about that, like from, both sides of Congress, that, this right. thing could turn nuclear. And so, but, no one has really addressed it in a scientific way before. And,
sure.
In regards to what this would look like policy wise. So that's why I brought it up.
So nukes are incredibly devastating. So keep in mind for scale. The nukes we dropped in Japan were half a kiloton, 500 tons of TNT equivalent. The nukes we have on standby are like 3 or 4 megatons a pop. And some of them are much larger than that. Some of them are smaller. 50 megaton being the biggest one ever dropped, Tsar-Bomba. That's a Russian nuke. But most of them are going to run you from somewhere between 1 and 10 megatons. So 3 or 4 megatons is kind of what we use, or have on standby anyway. Those bombs are... So the mega versus kilo thing should clue you in. They are thousands of times bigger in terms of their destructive capacity than the bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the standard nukes, pretty down bad. The H bombs, the thermonuclear bombs, those are the big boys. Those are the bombs those are like the world enders that nobody wants to drop. Those are the kind of mutually assured destruction level stuff. So if someone was going to drop a nuke to try and pull what we did with Japan at the end of World War II, it would probably be somewhere in the Ukraine. And that means, since it's not in NATO territory, then it's not going to trigger NATO response, so to speak. So that's basically the only place I see Putin actually dropping a nuke, if he's going to drop a nuke, is somewhere in the Ukraine. And he would be roundly decried for that. That would be a very bad move on his part politically at home. And that is why I don't see him going that route, unless he can spin it in such a way that somehow bombing the Ukraine stops us from bombing Russia.
Yeah,
that's the thing you have to tap dance around. You can't fall into that trap and give him that carte blanche to move forward. But he also wants to keep in mind, the Ukraine is, again, the breadbasket of the area, right? You don't want to bomb your farmland.
Well,
that's the last resort.
I was just gonna bring that up, actually, because I don't think that Putin is, stupid in that way. I don't think he wants to use nukes either.
He knows
just because of.
He knows it's a good retort to U.S. rhetoric. Our saber rattling can be quickly turned back on itself by saying, "Oh yeah, I'll just drop a nuke." That gets a lot of people with hot heads sputtering over here.
Well, yeah, well, a lot of people, at least in the press over here, kind of, it's effective towards, I guess, wagging the dog that is our media, because now you're seeing, sub headlines: is nuclear war going to be a thing? I mean, here's the thing: I don't think, aside from everything else, if if Putin were to use a nuke on Ukraine, like you said, Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world. It would disrupt, of food supplies and commerce on an almost international level.
Well, certainly Europe would be majorly affected. Definitely the Eastern Bloc, and the so Putin wants to capture land for Russia. He doesn't want to capture irradiated land for Russia, and he doesn't want to salt the earth, and so that the people he's not petty in that way, because the forward thinking there is eventually this Russian territory will be recaptured by Russia. That's the domestic opinion. That's the domestic mindset, is that this is Russian territory. Russia will claim it again for Russia because it was taken from Russia when it left. So they don't want to bomb it out of spite, because the plan is still to get it back anyway. So the next level beyond that is, if it's not to make a statement to end a war as a last resort like that, how else would he use nuclear weapons actively? And you have to think, okay, he's not trying to capture anywhere in the United States. It would have to be a point where the U.S. is so destabilized that using a nuke on the U.S. would not result in a nuclear weapon being sent back in return. So if there's any point at which destabilization here cripples us in such a way that we cannot return fire, if the U.S. falls into civil war, for example, if they know where our nuke sites are for the most part, partly because we advertised them pretty strongly before and we haven't moved them. But then you also have intelligence resourcing assets like those sent directly from China floating across the USA. So because we allow that, it's kind of, for one thing, it's a little more difficult to hide things like nuclear armaments as well, especially in the day and age of satellites. So they know where those are. If they bombed those strategically, again, so we mentioned earlier, the rods from God and the response from China being hypersonic missiles. Those are weapons that have no response time, is the reason why they're so dangerous. An ICBM has a response time of minutes, and that's enough time for countermeasures to be deployed. A hypersonic missile is fast in a way that an ICBM is not. So because it's an air-breathing missile in our atmosphere, does not extend out into space before coming back in, the time we have to respond is from like tens of minutes to less than 10 minutes. So that is not enough time for us to have a countermeasure in place that can stop something moving faster than the speed of sound. So an ICBM coming back in for reentry is moving subsonically. We can hit that with something else and blow it up before it has a chance to make ground contact. We can blow it up in space, basically. Or we can blow it up in upper atmosphere. We can stop that from causing a mass casualty event on the ground by landing. We cannot stop a hypersonic missile in the atmosphere coming in at a shallow angle faster than, like Mach 3 or Mach 5. That is something that we just can't shoot down. Same thing, like an orbital drop of any device. So the rods from God concept is a large chunk of metal, basically, a big rod that gets dropped down, and that has kinetic energy to it, whatever the orbital height is, just that gravity difference, right? So that's an impressive amount of energy, but it's very concentrated. That is a pinpoint device, unless you use something like a Flechet or a Fletchet. Those are area of denial devices or pinpoint devices. They are not. They're not like mass destruction devices like a nuclear warhead. So those can be used to do things like take out a nuclear silo. And because we don't acknowledge we have that, well, then we just say, "Oh, I don't know. Somebody got in there with a bomb." When clearly is a big chunk of steel or tungsten or titanium that blew through the bay doors on a nuclear silo. So again, that's akin to something like a bunker buster, but a little more powerful and is deployed from space. But the same rule applies there. You got less than 10 minutes to take that out. Less than 5 minutes. So between seeing it and then relaying that information to a person who would try to take it out, you've already passed your 5 minutes. Just by the way, like that whole decision line, including all the actions people have to take in between, you're well past 5 minutes there. So same applies to hypersonic missiles. We don't have another answer for hypersonic missiles yet. Those are going to be the things that I would look at. Russia and China were kind of cozy before COVID, and then Russia got really pissed off at China because of the whole COVID thing. But now that there's this whole Ukraine issue with NATO, Putin's more likely to be willing to make concessions with the Chinese government to get his hands on stuff like hypersonic missile tech.
Well, and I was reading just yesterday that, I mean, China does not really want to, they don't really want to see this conflict escalate any further, but they're not afraid to aid Russia if that will mean getting this conflict over sooner for them.
So China's happy with Putin pressing on America and NATO right now because our economy is not doing great, even though like the indicators are crossed, which is bad. Says that we're headed towards a recession, or we're in a recession. We're headed towards a depression if we don't pick up pace here. So we have to have high unemployment, or we have to accept that we're going to run over the edge and land right into a depression, which means the whole economy collapses, which is not good. China is happy with that because they're a major trading partner, and that's how they can maintain a trade deficit. They're in a very powerful negotiating position right now. So they're not very keen on handing tech over to Putin unless he has some pretty big concession to hand them. For instance, the Russian economy is picking up really strong right now because it's in a wartime economy, which is where, you saw how the U.S. turned around on a dime back in the 40s. Same things can right now going on in Russia. We also gave them the petro ruble by taking them out of the credit market, by kicking them off of SWIFT. We did that. The petro ruble and the petro yuan exist today because of what Biden did with SWIFT. So because we gave them that, it used to all be petrodollar. Because we gave them the petro ruble, their economy is very strong right now. And so if they turn around and they manage to make it so that China is our major trading partner on the same parity as with the U.S., it's then a much easier position for China to turn around and hand them assistance in the same way that we're handing assistance via NATO to the Ukraine. It's much easier for them to be in that position if they don't have to turn around and wait for the U.S. to be upset about their trading negotiations with them. So that's the kind of it's an imbalanced playing field, and it's kind of it's kind of got some wobble to it. So that if you roll one way, you kind of get stuck there. But if you roll the other way, then you might hop over a little bump and find yourself in World War III. But again, I mean, we shouldn't kid ourselves. We're basically in the proxy war version of that right now.
Yeah, well, we've been in a proxy war, with that for a while, and I mean they're all sorts
a couple
of
decades
theories. Yeah. Well, and I mean they're all. And listen, I can say this now. I'm not on YouTube, but I don't necessarily think that Ukraine is. They're plenty fishy here, too. Like Russia's not good, but neither is Ukraine.
Well, you're right.
If you look into the whole money laundering thing.
The thing with Ukraine is, so one of the major issues with Ukraine, and the fighting with Putin. So again, as you said, Putin's not stupid. He's not like the smartest politician in the world, but he's certainly not a retard. You know, he's better. I'd say he's a better than average politician in terms of intelligence. The Nazis
He's
exist
former
in
KGB.
Ukraine. Exactly.
That's not stupid.
Right. He's not just former KGB. He's former KGB, and he's still alive, and he's the president of Ukraine. Still, so like he's not dumb.
Right.
In terms of politics, he's not the smartest politician. He's better than average. So the Nazis do exist in Ukraine. You know, Azov Battalion, all that. That's true. And the thing is that when we try to propagandize that away, especially after we were just recognizing it before the war started, the hot war started, that looks bad already. And he can point to that action and say, see, the West is backing Nazis. We have to denazify this area. By not acknowledging that, by funding that, we've driven ourselves, we backed ourselves into these corners. And then, you know, so this is where I think we have some pretty dumb people leading a charge in this respect. We back ourselves into this corner rhetorically and by action on the front, by putting money into the problem. And then, you know, we then say, how the hell did this happen, right? No, it's pretty clear. You backed the wrong player on the field. It's not like there's only two teams here. You got a complex structure in the political spectrum, if you will, hanging out on the front line. You didn't want to back the Nazis if you're going to be upset about them later, or you're upset about them before, or if that was the reason why the other team was saying they're coming in. That's just a really dumb position to put yourself in. But here we are. And so Zelensky, by backing these assholes, gives Putin the same, like, and I get it, like, he's using every resource he's got on the field. We didn't need to overtly be backing these people. There are idiots, you know, across the Twitter space that have Azov Battalion symbols they're holding up. You know, they got Azov flags in their profile pictures. That's a Nazi flag.
Right, yeah.
It's just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, pardon my language on that front, but it's like, it's ridiculous.
Oh, no problem. We drop. Yeah, it is fucking ridiculous. Yeah, we swear pretty liberally.
I didn't know exactly how far that was going to go, and I see the parental advisory thing now.
yeah. There's a reason why that's there. So,
but I mean, if you heard the podcast I do weekly, like there's no shortage of swearing on that one. I was trying to, you know, ease my way in here. I didn't want to just blow in with 3 or 4 F's in a row, if you will.
No.
It's ridiculous that we do that we fund these people.
Are you kidding? I get paid by the F-bomb. No, I don't. I wish I did.
Right.
That would be fucking fantastic.
Right. Yeah. My fucking swear jar funds me. There you go. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, this whole thing has just, you know, been a shit show. I'm not even sure why I mean, I have a guess.
What's a buffer?
As to why we're.
Well, like, you know, unofficially, unprovably, without receipts, we kind of figure we got flagged down by certain parties, you know, or flagging a whole bunch of Sam's content on all kinds of platforms. He's over here trying to fight it, right? He's writing out all of the appeals himself. You know, nobody's doing that for him. And do you even know what to appeal? Because they don't really tell you necessarily what you did wrong.
See, that's the one where I saw him get that one, which was unfortunate. The one where they don't tell you what it is that they flagged you for, and they just tell you your channel's gone. Mm-hmm. The Fake Untitled podcast has been fortunate enough to have specific episodes flagged in such a way that we had a chance to kind of like take everything else down before it could get flagged more. Right. But when they hit you like on 5 or 6 videos, and all of them for the same thing, and all of them have, you know, just enough justification to get the automated system to ban you. Sometimes they just tell you the general reason, like the community guidelines or whatever the hell, and they just knock it off the radar.
Yeah,
which sucks.
Their natural monopoly is breaking up though because of it.
Oh
It's
yeah, absolutely.
Like the reason that we're able to do this here on Odyssey and talk about these heavy topics, and there's been some heavy hitting topics tonight. I've been sitting back listening, right? Because I think it's interesting. I think Sam is a great interviewer, and that's why we figure this is a great format for the show. But like we couldn't talk about what 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of the things that we talked about tonight in detail without hitting some kind of fucking misinformation, disinformation, bullshit. And it's all based on like Wikipedia articles and shit.
That pisses me off to no end. For instance, the COVID-19 thing, where Steve, Evan, and I, we discussed this, back in 21. Very like the zoonotic theory has been bullshit the whole time, and multiple institutions have, medical, scientific, and government institutions have lost permanently, fucked their public trust over a lie, a politically motivated lie, and in a disgusting perversion of science,
and a lie that like didn't need to be like.
But we've been right the whole freaking time, and that was one of the things we got flagged in on, and it's you seeing it now come out where, now you have another intelligence agency coming out going, oh well, maybe kind of, yeah. I mean, we'll call it new evidence. Like, no, man, the basis for the zoonotic theory that a pangolin and a bat were present at the same time in the wet market never happened. So the entire theory, no matter how complex it is, based on those animals, doesn't matter because the experiment did not reflect the fucking theory. The theory's bunk. It's garbage. Gone. Like that kind of that kind of topic verboten on YouTube at the time, and it's
even to bring up
irritating
the topic
to no end.
Because people that agree with the establishment on this they suffer the same fate a lot of times.
Yeah,
just discussing anything to do with COVID is completely verboten, and it's insane. Because like that's all we've been exposed to for a couple of years at this point. You should at least be able to talk about it with some intelligence and in depth. But of course, YouTube doesn't give a fuck. And these competitors that are cropping up that respect free speech and look, Odyssey and Rumble have rules and people do get banned off of them. So for the free speech extremists, maybe they're not the perfect place, but the alternative on the mainstream side of things is YouTube banning you for literally just saying COVID-19. It's insane.
The other thing too that I do want to point out is because Whiskey has been commenting in chat, and usually when I type I dictate, but because I'm on air, dictation isn't like my hotkey. Doesn't work because I've already got my mic setting for streaming. Anyway, my earlier comment in regards to that I was throwing shade at Vickers because he said he was going to tune in, and he didn't. He's off watching.
I think Whiskey Runner had a point, right? And it's kind of something that we're addressing, and we weren't just coming out and like, oh, this is kind of the new direction, like in your face like that. We were just, we got a good guest and we were going to play the idea going forward, guys. Like, let's just, lift the curtain and be real is we're going to get good guests and have Sam interview him because Sam is a great interviewer. And that's kind of what I thought that would make for a good show.
The other thing too,
the drama stuff is not even really like Sam's fucking wheelhouse, right? So like, why, if other people are doing that kind of content, that's great. But I think there's a lot of people that do content around a certain individual, and it's kind of oversaturated.
Unless you can get someone like Montez on here, which would be pretty funny for me to see happen. But I'm not saying you should.
The other thing too, though, is in regards to the Groypers in America first, like striking. I don't know that they struck that they were the ones.
It would be Occam's razor that they would have done it, right? Like, obviously, they're going to be the first person anybody thinks of that it was either Groypers or people related with Ralph. Some people would say Kiwi farmers did it because they were making fun of you the other day. But quite frankly, what they were saying on Kiwi farms, I was showing you it because you don't like go and bother to read that shit. But we were laughing about it because they actually, like, one of them was like, oh, does he have such and such? And it's like, well, kind of, yeah. Like, what are you, stupid?
The other thing though too, and not a lot of people might not know this, is I actually interviewed a long time ago Nick's former business partner James Alsop, and at the time nobody knew who, like, what James Alsop's actual, like, ideology was at the time. And then when I basically said I didn't want to have anything to do with them because of Charlottesville, he got ass mad and tried to flag stuff years ago. At least I think it was him. And then so, like, my point being is
it's so dumb to just flag people down over, like, e-drama. And that's why I think, like, the best step for us is to, like, stay in the lane of what you do best, man. And that's what I'm striving for. But we also have some other fun stuff planned too. Like, and I hope people stick around. Like, I just came aboard to try and help you make the show as good as possible, you know?
Yeah, and all I'm saying though is, like, it could have been because of some of the drama stuff, but at the same time, like, I could just gotten struck because of YouTube's.
Oh, it could have just been literally, you said COVID-19, like we were saying. Like, there's a lot of stuff. You guys have said some stuff that is not YouTube friendly over the years, and maybe that just caught up with you too. It could be any number of things. The best thing to do is going forward is not to who fucking did this or whatever and try and play witch hunter, is just to fucking make the best content we can do and lean into what you do best and not slap fight with retards, you know. And hey, we can say retard now.
If you know, that's the other thing. Like, I was talking to a friend today who, like, an IL friend he's Australian and he lives here. His gaming channel just got struck down because he said cunt in one of his gaming videos.
He got struck down for
pretty frequently.
That's amazing.
Now he's Australian, so he didn't use cunt as an insult towards a woman. He used cunt because over there in Australia,
because it's every other word.
Yeah, they use cunt like we use asshole here. So, but I think that's the most we.
Striking an Australian man for saying cunt is like striking him for breathing, dude. That's what they do.
They say cunt like we think they drink Fosters.
Yeah. And it's so petty, and it's petty now. Like, the flagging war is an even pettier form of censorship. So, like, on the one level, you're talking about, like we said, topics themselves that are verboten, and then on the next level, it's amazing to me that there's a whole bunch of like little like cretins that thrive on nothing more than going and flagging people down who they're not even all that in much disagreement with on like a large chunk of issues in the world, but they have nothing better to do than like play these games of flagging each other down, trying to get everybody taken down. It's like this mutually assured destruction bullshit. And
you hit the nail on the head there.
But the beauty of it is that things like Odyssey, Rumble, and all these other alternatives have sprung up in the wake of it.
Well, I
even
think
Cozy for what that's worth.
So one topic that people have actually requested, and I wasn't going to announce this until next week, is I have gotten some requests for people to basically give me to basically give my opinion on the new CEO of YouTube, and I might do that at some point. But honestly, I have no idea who the guy is. So at this time, I'm assuming at this point that the guy who's taking over for Susan. Hey, I don't think anything's going to change with YouTube. I think it's going to get worse.
No.
If anything.
And we talked about this right after it happened, and my suggestion to you was don't even bother making another like ban evasion account. Because it's a waste of fucking time anyway. As they piss their platform away to alternatives, Odyssey and Rumble are now like apps that are convenient and easy for people to use. That really, the gap that was there that used to exist gets smaller. And now, Elon Musk is talking about implementing features like live streaming and video content with monetization and super chats and all that kind of shit into Twitter. So that like, that's an even easier competitor because it's been an app all along that most people have on their smartphones, even if they don't fucking use it.
They've kind of rolled out like super follows, but what I've noticed is it's mostly all the e-thoughts that are using
of course,
the super follow.
But like the rise of alternatives that have the features, because the thing about like a BitChute, why did BitChute never become as kind of mainstream as Rumble or Odyssey are already becoming? It's because it didn't have the same functionality that YouTube had at that point. It was almost like a mirror of an old branch of YouTube, right? Like YouTube 2009,
well,
with problems that brings in all. And BitChute also had a lot of problems with uploading and things like that. And they never had live streaming. But now that these things are fully featured, you can access them easily on your smartphone, even if you have a mainstream device like iOS or Android. So like, it makes it like YouTube cannot hold this monopoly forever with the draconian policies that they have. It's just not going to happen. They operate at a loss anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the
sorry for going off on a rant.
No, and thank you for bringing that up, Max. That they're operating at a loss, because what I was explaining to a friend is the only reason why YouTube can still operate, even though they're operating at a loss, is because they have never really had a competitor for all these years. They've basically been, I mean, Twitch, if you're a gamer, somewhat, but basically YouTube has been.
Well, no, Twitch wasn't a competitor. Twitch wasn't a competitor because YouTube actually had to catch up and get into the live streaming game. It wasn't in it the same way that Twitch was. And then it quickly surpassed it in a lot of ways because it had more, again, it had that more function of like, it's the app, right? But
right.
Among the gamer niche, Twitch did hold its ground and stand its own. But then again, the reason that Odyssey and Rumble exist is as simple as both of those platforms are draconian. And not only that, their draconian policies of banning people for stupid shit specifically in writing targets right-wing creators. And of course there's going to be people that can code and create these things on the right, and in particular, with the open source market, which like I like Odyssey, from a technical level, just because of the technology that it's built off of. They're doing something different, trying to make it censorship resistant, which is the key,
Yeah, well, I mean, and right now, you're right that the big poll is people who have gotten censored, but like as I just said, my friend who is a gamer, who actually, like I don't really know his political opinions all that well, but he's a normie, right? And even he got banned. So as YouTube continues to push people away, I think you're going to see Odyssey Maybe not so.
I think that that's the YouTube plan, and I think that that's the plan of the new incoming CEO, and that's why they brought him in, because they've been moving in that direction for years. YouTube doesn't want the homegrown creators anymore. There's too much liability in it. They want safe, corporate, big time people to that's why they shove that into your feed on YouTube, whether you want it or not. Right?
Yeah.
You've never watched fucking, Jimmy Fallon in your fucking life, but there he is on your timeline like 3 times a week. Why is that? But there are some homegrown YouTube creators that will ascend and stick with the obviously they can't get rid of PewDiePie. They can't get rid of like people that are kind of synonymous with the platform. But smaller creators, especially smaller creators like us that are sitting here with just a handful of viewers at most of the time, and then you get a couple hundred views on the the replay. Nobody gives a fuck about us, and we can't even fight for ourselves. I was surprised that it was funny. My tweet and then your retweet of my tweet finally got fucking Team YouTube's attention to tell you that they had no idea what the fuck was going on, and go ahead and reapply, and then we'll send you an email saying fuck you. Right? Thanks so much, you Team YouTube. Golf clap for that.
which was done by a bot. By the way, because I specifically said in the form that they have you send out, I'm like, here's the here are the specific videos that got struck the first 2 times, and I told them I would like an actual reason as to why I got struck. At this point, I was asking them more why I got struck in the first place and more details on that. And if they could at least give me a reason.
They don't tell you. What are you supposed to appeal? Like, imagine if you went into a courtroom, right? If a courtroom operated this way, and you just walk, you get a subpoena, and it says Sam Whitfield appear at court, and you show up, right? And you're like, what is this about? And they're like, how do you plead? Not guilty, I guess. Right? What is the charge?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't get to know the charge. How do you plead? It is literally witch trial level shit. It's insane to me how commonplace it is. And yet you're right. Like normies, especially like boomer normies, know the fuck out of Facebook jail and Twitter jail. Like boomers use those words all the time now because they get locked up for saying shit that's like normal for a boomer to say. Like, little phrases or even I actually on Facebook one time years ago, I got a 24-hour timeout because I said tranny in the context of talking about a car transmission.
That's what I thought was coming.
Oh, what you did?
Yeah.
That is
Facebook fucks that up quite easily, yes.
And it's just like
that is hilarious, actually.
I never even thought that would like I wasn't trying to be cute and get around literally we were talking about my friend's car had broken down, and he was talking about he needed to replace the transmission, and I asked how much for a tranny,
Hadn't you heard? Called necromancy.
That was in like 2013. I didn't trannies weren't even a thing.
Well, so supposedly, like Facebook is going to start allowing like nudity, but only for trans people. Is what I've heard.
I've
not seen anything to corroborate that, but that would be a very strange
that was for
decision.
for trans creators or whatever the heck it was. It was for the people, basically for trans insta-thoughts.
Great.
I mean, to boil it down to that, sex workers are being oppressed, and therefore that's going to trump common sense.
Yeah.
Just show fucking graphic pornography to children because sex workers are oppressed.
That's where it's headed.
Jesus.
Yeah,
and they
I
wonder why people get mad. If there's one topic that I could bring up, it was the new definition of genocide this week. Have you seen that one, Sam?
no. Oh no, what's this?
Oh yeah, it's great.
What's this?
Let me pull it up because it was absolutely fantastic.
In the meantime, like just as a general reminder, and I brought this up in the last podcast I did for with Evan and Steve. Most trannies are just normal people trying to get on with their fucking day.
Yeah.
It's these loud assholes that fuck it up for everyone else. And it's the same thing, any time where you have multiple political ideologies butting heads, you're gonna find the loudest, dumbest people within each camp hanging out near the border between the two fighting. And that's exactly what's going on. Most people just want to get on with their fucking day and go home and do their own thing.
My barber is a 65-year-old gay guy, but he's also based as fuck. So I'll put that in for him.
He's also probably not asking you out on a date.
But in back in June though of last year, he was. I went to see him and he was like, I am so sick of all this gay pride shit.
Yeah.
In June, he's like, I just want to be left the fuck alone.
So I dropped the tweet in every chat.
Oh, I saw that. Yes.
It's from our buddy Dick at Consent Accident. He's funny as fuck. He does some of the best memes in the world.
He's excellent. And it's this idiot Aaron Reed.
It's
one of those loud idiots.
Exactly. One of those people that has to have I like to call it like it's the race to the hottest take, and it just like destroys these people. It's insane. Because they have to have the hottest take, but they also have to have it faster than everybody else. It's like an edgelord pissing contest from all sides.
Funny thing is, this mirrors, to cut to the chase on this, but this mirrors the same kind of, the same kind of genocide, or the lead into genocide and how we're in a genocide from the more right wing extremists as well.
Yeah, that's
just funny.
It's so absurd. So Aaron Reed says, remember that the whole point of genocide is complete eradication. Quote, you have to ban transgenderism entirely. It doesn't have to happen by murder, though it can. Genocide can be cultural, political. The unifying factor is steps taken to wipe out a group from public life. And, okay. So apparently, saying that women are women is actually you're literally murdering them, and that's what you hear them say so often. It's just funny to watch somebody put it so like awkwardly and stupidly.
Well, so if you have one that's particularly annoying, you ask them, if you're if trans women are women, then why do I have to call them trans women?
Yeah.
And then you start the circular argument, let them spin around it a few times, and you say, okay, so why are there no trans females? And they start to get upset about that, and they'll spin around a little bit and say, okay, well, now define for me what a woman is. And then when they start to tell you about it's a state of being, etc., say, okay, define for me what female is. And then later on, you say, okay, so what you're telling me is that a dog, female dog, could ostensibly have some sort of feelings on the matter that might corroborate with whether or not that dog is kind of a dog woman, if you will. And then they'll get wrapped up on the difference between humans and dogs. Yeah, you see you skipping ahead. So at the end, you can wrap it up with a bow by saying, so how offended are you when I call you a bitch? And are you as offended as a woman would be? And that's where you kind of drop the shoe. Heel or otherwise.
Fair enough. Apologies for fucking killing the punchline.
No, that's fine. That was a fantastic lead-in for it.
I mean, the whole thing of is
Have you guys like because I've only encountered one in real life in like modern day and one in like back in the day. Like, have you guys encountered transgenders in real life?
A few, but not many.
Yeah.
there was one weird kid in high school who was like a cross dresser, but that was it.
That's not tranny.
Yeah.
Cross dressers are not
No.
trannies.
Well,
Yeah.
I ran into one at like a store and it was just really awkward. And like I'm polite, like look, man, everybody's just trying to live. Like I don't hate these people. That's the mistake that they make, obviously, right? They think everybody hates them or whatever. They're like paranoid. But like you're just worried that they're gonna pull some of this bullshit, right? And this particular this particular guy didn't pull any of that bullshit, although it did ask me to call it a girl, and I obliged for the sake of a conversation at a store, so I didn't get into a fucking big deal. But that's exactly why people don't want to be around them, is because you don't want to walk on eggshells and be afraid of being escorted out of the fucking weed shop. You know what I'm saying?
I actually brought this up to a liberal that I know. And my argument was, look, we don't hate transgender people. We're confused by them because the rules change like every 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, at their whim, because they're narcissists. Yeah. And like, I don't know, every time I see one of them, they're always not embodying like what I think of as a woman. They're embodying what's like a parody of a woman. Like it's like this like bimbofication of women, right? This idea that they're these like dumb hoes all the time. And look, a lot of women are dumb hoes. Well, let's be real. I mean,
a lot of them end up being autogynephiliacs. I mean, they're not. It's a paraphilia. It's not a it's a sexual fetish.
What?
Yeah. Okay. That's true too.
So imagine, if you will, a person who is attracted to the idea of themselves as a different gender and then proceeds to proceeds to torture their body into that parody of reality for their own sexual gratification.
But what really gets them off, right, is getting you to fucking bend to their will too.
That like, also. So
all of reality has to acknowledge how hot I am as a girl.
Some people genuinely have a severe gender dysphoria and dysmorphia that manifests so strongly that they need to socially transition. And I get it. And for a large majority of people,
I don't, and I disagree. But
aren't a pain in the ass. Like, I don't care. Like it's the same way that someone comes up to me and I and I find out what their name is. If I'm talking to someone else, I'm not going to call them that dumb faggot. I'm not just going to lead down that road.
I might.
I'll use their name, their preferred name, if you will. It's because they don't come off by showing up, showing me some pendant on their wrist that has their name, and then shrieking at me that this is what I need to call them by.
I was talking to my wife about this, and you know what I said? It's like, I'm all about live and let live. That's the fucking problem, is they don't, right? Like they step on us, in particular online, and getting people banned. I know, like, that's not a group that we specifically were naming as a suspect in getting your YouTube channel, because I don't think they were one, but they certainly have gotten a number of people I know's YouTubes, Twitters, and everything else taken down. Simply
the Lucasoids are a suspect on the Faith Untitled podcast YouTube issues.
Yeah,
but definitely.
Yeah, I mean it's fucking awful, but it's because like they really don't have an argument except to like la you're being mean, ban them. That's it. That's all they got.
Well,
sometimes life's mean. Sometimes the world is fucking mean itself. Like, the universe itself is sometimes fucking cruel, bro. Get over it.
Okay, so there are two that I'm really like confused on as to what the meaning of it. And I mean this partially rhetorical, but also not really. So when I was in college or finishing up college, that was when the term non-binary started becoming a thing, and all these lefties would start using it, and I I'm like what is non-binary? And they're like, oh, it's whatever gender you decide. I'm like, oh, so you can basically change your gender on a whim. Well, no, but
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
basically.
And
So
then
if
that
you're ever wondering if you're ever wondering what the fuck an NB is, it's non-binary. It's literally the two letters. It's just that they don't want to spell that out because somehow that has something to do with race too. Like the letters are already claimed by somebody else.
Yeah, because they have all the stupid hierarchies of rules upon rules that they keep adding to and subtracting from and turning on, and nobody wants to. And you're seeing a turn against it in kind of more of a mainstream sense, I think, lately.
Yeah.
Uh, that the Harry Potter thing, as silly as it is a massive proof of that. It becomes like one of the top selling games of all time, because everybody saw the tantrums that people were throwing were stupid, and also it was a property in a game that people were really excited for because it was something they grew up with, and they were just like, you know what, fuck you and your hissy fit. Nobody cares. Shut
Well,
up.
well, yeah, and well, what people fail to. I'm glad that you brought up the Harry Potter thing because I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but like I will admit that that is one thing where I'm glad a lot of the fans finally like drew a line in the sand, and because look, J.K. Rowling is still. It's not like she's a super right winger. She's liberal as fuck, but
Well, I think most of them
she actually.
I think most of them are, because even the lefties enjoy it in secret, right? They're playing the game and then hiding. They have guides on Kotaku how to hide your achievements from fucking Harry Potter. Yeah, because they're actually playing the game. So they're all a
Oh,
bunch of hypocrites
oh
anyway.
my,
But
oh
if
my
you were a Harry
god.
Potter, I'm not a Harry Potter fan either. I didn't grow up with that shit. I was way too old when it came out. It was for like way younger audience than myself. However, my wife is. I know a little bit about it, and I know one thing is that people into Harry Potter, this was their dream video game. You got your own
Yeah.
story with your own fucking professors. You made your own fucking character, and it's in this fully 3D open world where you can walk around doing Harry Potter shit. It's like their wet dream come true. And just because a couple of trannies have a hissy fit isn't going to stop them from playing what for a lot of them is their most dreamed of game of all time. You got to be
You know
retarded if you
what?
think that was going to work. Come on.
You, you know what though too? Like I've played the game, and like I said, I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I don't really know much of the lore, but it is an engaging game. I've enjoyed playing it as someone who has no clue really what. I mean, I know a little bit of what is in there, but it's a well put together game in all reality.
Yeah, and by people that clearly cared about the property that they were working with. There was a original director of the game that actually stepped down because they already had started bitching about it then, because he had liked some anti SJW YouTube videos like 10 years ago or some shit. And they were like, he has to be removed. So he stepped down because he didn't want to see the project destroyed. I don't know if you knew that, but like
Yeah,
that was a big deal.
yeah, I do remember reading something about that. Well, I mean, even in my case, I mean, I have a disability. I call myself the base crippled man because in part because I got tired of hearing the term differently abled, which is what we're supposed to say now. What the
Oh,
fuck does
is that it now? Well, because
Yeah,
because you can't
it's
be
definitely able.
because you can't be disabled, right? Because that means you're not abled at
The-
all. You have no ables. So we got to give you some ables, right? But they're different ables. That is such condescending
Well,
cat lady horse shit.
not just that, but if you look at it logically, it's like, well, we're all fucking differently abled, right?
Yeah,
Like
no
Well,
shit.
yeah.
Craig,
Well, here's the fun
like
one
Craig's
for you,
different.
actually. This one will come back on you and directly, the whole "what is a woman" thing. There are people out there who are transabled. You know about those people, those nutters? These are the kind of people who break their own fucking legs, or they go and get amputations of perfectly healthy tissue because they're so fucked in the head that they think that'll make them feel better.
And this is what I'm saying. Why do we encourage this shit at all?
I actually did encounter one of those people once, and I just lost I just lost my temper because I'm like, so let me get this straight. I've basically been disabled since birth, and I've had to deal with having cerebral palsy all my life.
Yeah. Hey,
how many? On the other hand,
I wonder how many of them would want your disability, right? They want to cut their fucking finger off or whatever that they can comfortably live with, but you don't see them lining up to fucking get that, do you?
Well,
No.
they always say stuff like, well, you have a pretty cool wheelchair, and it must be nice just like sitting
Oh
there,
yeah,
and,
man!
Like
chrome hubcaps,
like
it works.
Like they have no idea, and I mean I'm not saying that it sucks completely all the time, but it's what I have to deal with because
it would be nice to run to the store, right?
You fucking deal with what you got. You get your nice wheelchair and you keep it fucking clean, right?
I mean, hell, I got ADD, and I can't tell you how many people have pulled the fucking squirrel joke on me. It's like, yeah, that's not how it works, but that's hilarious, man.
It would be nice to be able to piss without standing up, without having to use a grab bar and shit like that. And most of the time, I just sit down. It's shit like that. It's like
True.
these people don't think about that, and then they're like, oh, I want to be transabled, and then they get transabled, and then they're like, oh my god, this was a mistake, and it's like,
well, it's a sick mind that seeks misery.
Yeah,
a fun one out of all this is the trans men, and not just the trans men, because that is sadly well, it's the minority of the trans population that are trans men, so women, and the ones that pass are the ones that get fully red pilled, if you will, on what it means to be a man, and it's a fantastic realization for them because they realize how much different it is to what being a woman is.
Yeah,
and a lot of them don't like it. A lot of them want the advantages, and there's advantages and disadvantages in both sexes, if you will. But then they want the best of both worlds, and they didn't realize what they'd be giving up.
Yeah, there's a famous '80s film, literally that's basically that,
where she just dresses up and binds herself. Yeah, and she just has and she goes to a group like one of those therapy groups for men, and just realizes how fucking horrifying things can be for some on occasion, and that the support network is entirely different. The language is entirely different.
Yeah. Like you might have your family, and usually your family's there for most men to some degree. They'll have family that's there, but beyond that, you really got to earn a support circle as a man. You don't just get handed that shit.
Yeah, no.
The biggest complaint that she had was how lonely she felt. Like, well, duh, you don't think the same. Like you're the nature versus nurture on this. Like, there isn't like a male and female brain in that respect, even though there kind of is, but there isn't like in the way it's wired necessarily. But the
Well-
nurture side of that comes in pretty heavy. Like if you're raised and socialized as a girl, like the fact of the matter is that the difference that there is between the male and female brain, the limited amount that there is a difference, is it heavily plays into the ability of the nature side of things versus nurture to shape the way the brain works. You know, the Dr. Money study, horror show and torture fest, if you will, pretty well conclusively showed the reverse on that a male brain really does not like being socialized into being a girl. Then again, there was a lot of torture that went on with that, so kind of a bad study.
Well, there's also
Yeah.
like inherent experience, right? I was talking about this
Sure.
again to my wife recently, where I said, like, well, like one thing you could never know because you could never experience it is holding your dick while you take a piss, right? It's a simple thing, it's a silly thing, right? But like, hey,
Well, no, but it's pretty straightforward.
sometimes sometimes it
Well-
feels pretty fucking good when you had to take a piss really bad.
Well, yeah,
And
the reason why is because all that urine runs right past your prostate. This is another sensation that women are not ever going to have.
Yeah.
But another thing that's the important side of that, I mean, you mentioned it as being largely about your hand being involved there, but the sensation that you feel from the other side of that connection is never going to be a sensation that a trans man will feel, because that skin is not innervated in a way that is connected back to the CNS anymore.
Right. It's just a
It's just
slopped
ripped
on,
off their forearm.
it's slopped on, rolled up piece of skin. It's fucking,
It may as well be dead tissue as far as the brain's concerned.
yeah.
It's
Well,
a very
what it
large
is,
belly button ring.
It treats it as scar tissue mostly. That's
Yeah.
why they have to keep lubricating the shit. It's fucking gross.
The
You know?
yeah, well,
I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, honestly.
Right. I would say you should probably just use some duct tape and a dildo. It'd get you a lot further.
I mean,
That's
I mean,
a little worse
it-
than that was meant to.
it's fucking sad that the trans community basically killed off tomboys for this upcoming
Yeah, they're all
gen-
identified as
generation.
trans at youth.
Yep.
Tom,
That's one that aggravates my wife because she was a tomboy, you know?
You know, they start off in boys' khakis, and then they graduate into being, minus the fact that it was Megan Fox. Megan Fox in the Transformers series, bent over underneath the car hood. It's like, well, it's clearly a woman now. there's not a lot of tomboy left.
Yeah, my wife
Yeah.
didn't get into like girly stuff until literally I was already with her. So she was in her 20s. She was always into like black goth. And when she was young, she was a tomboy. Yeah.
No, to each their own and all. And I love the entire premise of the goth. I'm unique and different, just like every other goth.
Well, she
Exactly
wasn't
the same way.
she wasn't super goth, you know what I mean? But like she wasn't like doing makeup and shit like that. But yeah. More
Yeah,
like
I
just,
understand.
she was a hot topic goth.
no.
So I had a couple friends growing up who were into that scene, and I gave them the exact same shit, and it was hilarious. That's actually one thing that goth kids could do, which was take a fucking joke.
No, we're worse than that. We're juggalos. What are you talking about? We went to the gathering together in 2009. It was the craziest fucking weekend you'd ever experienced. I wouldn't take it back for anything. Anybody wants to hate on me for that? I don't care. Go fuck yourself. It was a blast, man. I saw Guar at 3 a.m. drunk as fuck while
Guar's awesome.
smoking like a 3-foot tube.
Yeah.
Well,
but you see, Guar is not fucking the Juggalo band. I'm not gonna remember it because I don't have to fucking keep these things in my head.
well, yeah.
Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah,
That's because the gathering is just like get all these really cool like underground and gimmicky bands who will like whoever. Because Ice Cube played it. Like the year I saw it, it was like a crazy lineup. It was like a whole bunch of mainstream people. Fucking Wu-Tang Clan. I don't know. Head PE was there. Bunch of rock bands. It's just this big ass festival that they throw, and then ICP headlines it. Juggalos are crazy. It is a crazy time. Like, hey, it's a hell of a fucking party. It's in the woods. The police aren't allowed in. There's drugs and alcohol everywhere. There's a carnival, a literal full carnival, and you can go on all the rides for free. 24 hours a day. And it's just a crazy big party. So sue me. If everybody wants to make fun of me for that, I don't care. It was a blast.
Yeah,
I smoked a blunt with vanilla ice. Okay, come on.
hey man, you can't go wrong with that. I also love that like Ice Cube is like sounding off on the vaccine. Well, this was a few months ago actually, but yeah, Ice Cube I guess was sounding off on the vaccine.
Ice Cube's fairly based for like a lefty guy. Like, because like Ice Cube's primary concerns, like when he talks about political stuff, is basically making the black community a better place to live. So that kind of cuts across party lines a lot of time. And he does tend to talk a lot of common sense about things. So yeah, he's got some pretty good takes sometimes.
And then I talked about this on Monday's podcast, but what did you guys think of? Did either of you see the Woody Harrelson SNL thing?
I did not, but I know like his particular politic is like heavy libertarian, bordering on ANCAP, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so I'm sure he pissed everybody off.
Yeah, he basically like talked about how he loves to smoke pot, and then he basically like was like, so I was getting really high, and I read this script, and the script was for this movie about how like the drug cartels take over the world, and then they force all the people to take their drugs, and no one can go outside unless they take the cartel's drugs. And I just thought, man, that's a crazy movie. No one's ever gonna buy that. And it was
that's a good joke. That's legitimately a good joke.
it was 30 seconds that he did this whole like build up just to do that 30-second joke, and it was very subtle, but you could hear a pin drop in the studio.
Yeah, because those people are so out of touch. They like with reality outside of the little New York bubble, right? Like he's not because he don't live in Hollywood or New York. He goes and does his business, but I'm pretty sure he lives out in like Montana or some shit.
I will say though that if you ever seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, his parody of what a left-wing environmentalist is on Curb Your Enthusiasm is hilarious. I forget which episode it is, but it's definitely worth watching. So, but
yeah, man, fucking Natural Born Killers, Hunger Game. The thing is if you look at his work, he does particularly take kind of libertarian leaning projects over his entire career.
Well, even I would say, I mean, my favorite personally is True Detective.
There you go. Yeah. There's some of those themes in there too. Yeah.
And I mean, I know that McConaughey gets more of the credit for that type of thing, but like he's another one that is kind of like, I guess, libertarian-ish. So
yeah, I mean, there's a strain of those. You got what's his face, the guy that's friends with Adam Sandler. There, he's an ANCAP or something. Like, yeah, there's a lot of there's like a subset. I guess they're the edgy kind of right wing version of what you can be in Hollywood is ANCAP, right? That's fine. That's fine. You know, I love my ANCAPs. Like my buddy Asa J, I'm gonna try and get him on as a guest. By the way, this is one of the smartest guys on economics ever. But of course, me and him disagree because he's like a hardcore ANCAP, and so we've had some blowout screaming matches over the years too.
Is that the guy I keep hearing Shmula talk out that he like bullied off of like Gilded or?
No.
What?
Asa J is an old friend of mine.
Okay. Oh, okay. Who's the guy that gets like not Vinny, but the other guy that like came into the Gilded before me, and then I guess like Rage quit or.
I have no idea. I don't remember. I don't pay that much attention sometimes, I think. But yeah, we have fun, you know. But yeah, like I was saying, in Hollywood, if you're on the right wing, you just see. It seems like if you just say you're ANCAP, you kind of get a pass, right? Whereas if you say you're conservative, you get canceled. If you're an ANCAP, you still get roles.
Unless you're Norm Macdonald, in which case he like somehow.
I mean, hey, Netflix kept him going forever. Yeah, you're right.
Netflix kept him going, and Coulter had a huge crush on him too. If you guys want to see something really weird, just type into YouTube like Norm Macdonald and Ann Coulter. There's a hilarious video from a few years ago where he's filling in on Dennis Mo's radio show, and Ann Coulter calls in, and she's just basically like hitting on him nonstop the entire time, which is not Ann Coulter's like personality whatsoever normally. But it's just hilarious to watch. But anyway, Craig, anything else you want to discuss or anything else you want to plug? I don't want to keep people up too late tonight, but
well, it is a weekday. It's why we normally try to do our shows more towards the weekends if we can. On the other show. No, I mean, I think we more or less covered the topics that you wanted to get into. You know, if you have any more questions on that end.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on, and you know, I mean, you're honestly the first actual like expert I've talked to in regards to, you know, chemicals and nuclear stuff that didn't sound like they came off of. Well, you're not. Well, as far as I know, though, you're not some QAnon weirdo. That's what I'm saying.
I know how QAnon got started, and it's hilarious that a couple of 4chan mods were able to cause a movement like that.
Yeah, I have a feeling we both know who QAnon is in here.
Oh shit! So the QAnon being a 4chan thing is true then.
It was a grift by 2 mods. Yes.
Yeah, well, and then it just became a thing, right? Like, because it's so easy to just write a QAnon post and say some gibberish, maybe rhyme, you know, maybe have like some weird numbers,
some Nostradamus level stuff.
Yeah, and then just sign it with a Q and like use a spoof that's like a spoof IP that's like near DC somewhere vaguely, and then people are like, oh my god, this is a real. I had one that I put up there that was posted in Zero Hedge as one of the quote unquote real ones.
I mean, you just gotta say something silly like the pigeon will land on the mutton chop, and then it just takes off.
And the king will return to his throne, you know.
What?
Oh my god, Trump and August.
What do they mean by this?
Yeah, so I've been on the internet since I was like 6 years old. Like since like the winter of 92 or like 92 or 93, it was when I got online. So I've been around for a very long time watching this shit happen. And QAnon is no different from any other kind of conspiracy bullshit, and it's hilarious to watch. I mean, I feel kind of bad for all the grannies who put their kids, college money away into this shit. But as far as people being taken for a ride, like it's no different from any other kind of internet bullshit.
I mean, I've also, been on the internet for, since I was a young kid. I mean, I literally started podcasting when I was like 14. I remember back in the day when Alex Jones was, when you could find him on Winamp,
right,
or Shoutcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at like the forefront of Shoutcast streaming. I did a show for fucking years and years on Cryptic Radio. It was like a fairly large station at the time. I miss those days because I could just play music, like have a radio show, right? Like a old school radio show. And I got to know all these amazing like underground artists. And then like B, I could say whatever I want because I worked at a radio station. I won't say the one because it's a bit doxy, but like I worked at an actual radio station as an intern for like 2 years, and they even let me host a show at like 3 a.m. on a Saturday for like a short period of time. But they immediately started censoring me, and it was at the pinnacle of Shoutcast. I was like, I could just stream a show from home. I'll show them. I'm going to make my own radio with blackjack and hookers. And we did. Except without the blackjack or the hookers.
That is that's awesome. Yeah, the
internet used to be cool, man. I don't know what happened.
It really was. Well, I was on there with BBS, so that's bulletin board system. That's basically proto 4chan, if you will, except it was civilized. And I would talk to okay, quotes. But the people who would like the architects of the internet would show up on BBS because it wasn't a very large community of people who like would do that kind of text messaging board stuff. And it was as boring as you think it sounds. It would just be a bunch of text on your screen. There's no images, no real formatting besides like dashes and vertical bars and a little bit of ASCII art. But it's you could talk to the people who like made shit happen on the internet and learn from them how stuff worked. And if all you just have to do is show up very politely and ask them how to do stuff, and they are more than happy because they are happy to geek out on you. Just all you have to do is throw a buzzword or two in there to let them know you understand some of the fundamentals, and they'll just take off. It's like anybody who's and I'll go ahead and claim the term a nerd here. Like you just get them talking about the stuff they're passionate about, and they'll roll on for hours and days. But it's on a bulletin board system, so like it doesn't. You don't have to be there to listen to them. They'll just keep going, and you can come back and read it later.
I don't want to give it away, so I won't say who. But that is basically the guests we have lined up for you next, Sam. And that's exactly what he will do. I will say that his background is actually in AI. He worked in tech as a AI programmer or something similar to that in the 90s. And he's a really interesting guy, and he has a lot to say about AI. And I feel like that's a current event, right? That's something that he might have a perspective on. So,
oh yeah, definitely. Well, playing around with
that's a fun area all on its own, and I've got enough experience in that one. A lot of this stuff with the whole freaking out about is ChatGPT self-aware kind of stuff. So it's nowhere.
It's a fucking Markov. It's a really, really, really advanced Markov chain bot. No.
Well, so it's more advanced than that. It's not a Markov chain. It is a neural net. But it's
slapped on top of a Markov chain.
So it's a recurrent neural network. So that means instead of all being fed one direction, some of the stuff feeds back, and that's basically kind of like you think of like having RAM on a computer. So it has an internal state because of that. And because of that internal state, you can do some meta programming, which actually I had fun with discussing with your brother. Um, we got ChatGPT to say some very funny things.
I
But
bet.
it's because
I have too. Yeah.
it's because you can manipulate this internal state. But it's temporary. It doesn't. It's not reflective of the training of the thing, and it has a filter which is an entirely separate neural net that's trained to block out some stuff and give canned answers. And then you can it's got another internal state to that, but it's a smaller network. It's trained on specific inputs. Like if you say, "Tell me a joke about men," and then "Tell me a joke about women," that kind of difference. That can be kind of hammered away at, but if you load in certain things ahead of time, you can get it to start saying stuff you want, as long as you manipulate this internal state. This again, pseudo speak here, like a RAM buffer, like a memory buffer. So it's not sophisticated in the sense of a general purpose AI or artificial general intelligence, an AGI. It's not it's not Skynet. It's nowhere near
Right.
something that's sophisticated enough to do that.
It's running words like numbers and using patterns. Like it's not doing abstract thought.
Yeah. But again, like if it can appear that way to the layperson, and
Absolutely.
it has not interacted with it sufficiently to start to figure it out. And because it's as broadly read, so to speak, it's trained on such a large data set that reflects so much of what has been spoken by people online. It will, if you start talking to it like you're talking to someone online, or even talking to a bot online, that's part of its training set too. Is a lot of chatbot logs. It will respond in a way that looks like other stuff you see online, and a lot of that is, a lot of that's us, but it's not deep us. That's not the deep thought of humans. You will never get
Right.
on a trained neural network. You will never get what's called insight learning, where you learn from a mistake, abstract from that, and prevent another mistake from happening by modifying unrelated behavior.
I actually had and Max was there for it, but I actually had ChatGPT write a full length magazine review of the Whitfield report.
It knew his show immediately, and it was accurate, and it was a glowing review.
But we also figured out that what it did was it probably pulled from iTunes and all these other
Spotify reviews, iTunes, things like that. Yeah. Which is great. That's cool. I think that's awesome that you could get it to do that, and it recognized you, because I tried a couple other things, including my garbage show, and it didn't know me. So good on ChatGPT.
Well, no. It did after a while though. Remember, once you clarified,
you have to. I directed it to my YouTube channel, and then I think it scraped my descriptions of my videos and came up with something to say about it.
It gave a very interesting description for what Gamergate was. It was actually as far as what Gamergate is, it gave probably the most neutral, factual response that I've ever seen on what Gamergate actually was.
The thing is, whether people like it or not, this type of AI is going to be integral to a lot of business and commerce going forward, probably education as well.
I mean, it very well could replace journalism.
That's I mean, to a degree,
maybe not replace journalism, but definitely move in a different, hopefully in a better direction.
I did the beep boop robo game reviews to kind of prove that you could make a garbage baseline review very easily with ChatGPT, and then use another AI to do the voice and I made that in like 45 minutes. It's a YouTube video review. And the thing is, the game it's reviewing, it's super accurate about that game, which is hilarious because it's probably just pooling from all these like Metacritic reviews or whatever. Will it replace game journals? No. But does it give them a run for their money to actually start producing content instead of non-tent? Probably.
Games journos are really not that hard to replace.
Not at all. No, and if the baseline AI can just make a good game review in 5 minutes with a realistic sounding voice that you don't even know the difference if it's fucking real or not, why wouldn't they want to step their game up because they're going to be replaced by those? It's like being a McDonald's worker when you see the kiosk doing a good job and you suck.
So a fun one to look at, which is very poorly trained, is the U.com AI search engine. So what you do is you go to YOU.com, type in your, say your Twitter handle, and then at the top, like with Google where you have the different kinds of searches you can do after you got your search results initially. Next to all, there's a tab called Chat. Click on Chat, and then it'll tell, like, if you just put in your Twitter handle and then you search yourself and then you click on Chat, it will respond. And it's not very well trained, and so it doesn't really know what is the best information that's important to pick up. So, for example, right now, I just did a search. So CraigBob99 would be me on Twitter. That's the handle of Craig D. Mansfield. The user joined at date, has followers, which is not usually even the correct number of followers. Has been involved in a variety of conversations on Twitter. And this is the one that's hilarious to me. It says discussions about My Little Pony, child beauty pageants, and more. It says, on August 24th, 2022, CraigBob99 allegedly swatted Marjorie Taylor Greene, an American politician in the Republican Party. So there's a lot of fun you can and they know that it's not like fantastic AI yet, but like this is one of those great things. Like, it's a meta kind of a meta application for AI, where instead of continuing a prompt that you're given, like in ChatGPT, it's the AI is being used to select the information that is returned back to the user. So it's kind of like a prompt, but it's a meta version of that, where it's about the prompt, not the continuation of the prompt. So it's trying to select from the data. It's able to search out how to give the correct answer to your query.
AI, as we know it right now, what we're talking about is it's a medium, it's a tool, right? And like it's because like I maintain the AI art is still to some degree, because it requires the prompt. It is still it's a human thing. There's a human interaction there. It's not this fully independent. Everybody thinks of fucking Skynet, and it's just kind of silly because this isn't capable of higher thought or anything like that.
Oh boy. Yeah, so that's the website. Just go ahead and fire in a query there. Someone's handle.
This should be fun.
My favorite part about I don't interact with MLP at all, and I think that I think bronies are fucking cancer. So the fact that it keeps saying that I'm somehow an active user in the My Little Pony fandom is hilarious.
Yeah, AI be trolling you.
And then it's like, and has an Aryan pony OC that has garnered a lot of attention. And that just that's amazing.
Oh, you'll have to show me your Aryan pony OC.
Right, yeah, that's exactly
wonderful.
Yep, chat.
Okay, this sounded fun. Okay. Sam Brown Instagram DC is an Instagram user with 544 followers, 2,147 and 393 posts. They have posted photos and videos from various locations, such as Tampa. Okay, that's partially correct. And Ireland. No. They also regularly post about their travels and experiences, which, yes, on Instagram I do. But, okay,
Well, you see, it's pretty low-hanging fruit for it to look for, right?
The funny thing of it is I think they're getting the Ireland thing because I love me some Guinness, and so whenever I'm out at the pub, I always post Guinness pictures to Instagram, and that
if that's the case, that's fucking hilarious.
But at the same time, it's also you are making a big a leap in your assumption here. Just to give you an idea, like how easily people will fall in. And I'm not saying you are, but how easily someone could fall into a trap that they provide themselves to give an AI some level of humanness that it doesn't really have. You know, so you're assuming a certain depth of search by saying that the ability to connect Guinness to Ireland, for example, is a bit of a stretch for this thing.
Maybe, but but that's what's funny is I've never been to Ireland before.
Well,
so
I think the funny part.
But if you said something like "My Irish Pride," it might have picked up on something like that.
That's true
too.
Or if you posted from a pub on St. Patty's Day or some shit, and you're like "Happy fucking Irish Pride" or whatever, yeah. But the thing is we don't know, and that's half the fun of like an AI like this that's not fully formed is just to speculate on the bullshit. But he's right. It's always a trap because you can't really know what like information barrel it's picking from to find whatever scrap of information it has.
Okay, let's see if it'll do anything new for.
It does a new blurb every time you search even the same thing. By the way, I haven't gotten one of the things you can look for, when you're doing a data analysis is something called a fixed point. So if you feed a function the same value over and over again, or if you try to feed it the output that it put out as the input over and over again, sometimes it'll come to a fixed point and it'll give you the same result every time. And that's not something that I've observed with U.com as of yet. So whatever it's using as an input has a degree of randomness to it.
Yeah, because Campbell Hall, New York, that's not the case.
Well, for instance, I could put my handle in again, and I get, Craig99 Twitter handle of me, a political commentator who is active on social media, known for his outspoken opinions and his support of the Latin American community. His most recent tweets are related to current political events as well as his personal views on a variety of topics, which is all generic gobbledygook.
Except the Latin American community one, which the reason that stands out is because it's so very specific, and then right. You'd be like, well, where did it pick this kernel of information up? And you'd probably find some red herring to blame it on. But it is funny that it always has one very specific thing like that
right.
seems to be obviously not true.
But if I was to try to ascribe something, if I was trying to make it a logical leap here, my girlfriend is Latin American.
There you go. Okay.
For example, and if I would say, clearly it was picking up on that, which I don't talk about.
So you support it by you support the Latin American community by banging them.
I support the specific Latin American.
There you go.
well, that's the best way to support them and make more of them.
But it's not a Latin American. I mean, it's LatAm, but she's not like U.S. American yet. So like that. So it's funnier because the different levels of the different rabbit holes you can go down with this stuff it's all fascinating and a lot of it's hilarious.
Well, so I try and I was explaining this. We had the guy on our server that had joined. I don't even know where he came from, Vinny, and he's a bit conspiratorial. And I try and explain to him, it's like sometimes, a cloud really does look like a thing, and sometimes it's just a cloud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit, I would say to him, it's a bit funny that you just so happened to find your way here and then see exactly how far down the rabbit hole he wants to go with that one.
Vinny is also, and to be fair to him though, he's also like incredibly. He's what, 22?
Yeah, he's a young guy. No, I don't mean to pick on him. It's just I was explaining that specifically to him the other day. It's like, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, as they say, and then sometimes it's a big brown dick, right? Like it depends on the situation. But it's the conspiracy stuff in particular can be really sexy, and that's why it's so easy to fall down, because it's sexy to look for hidden codes, and it's sexy to find hidden knowledge that nobody else has. Like, I'm smart, I know a thing ahead of time, and it's not really good for you. It's like fast food.
No, yeah. No, the only reason I brought up his age is like I'm 28 now, but when I was 22, I also remember being like, there are all these conspiracies, and now I'm kind of like, probably isn't a conspiracy.
Well, that's the thing, is there's all kinds of things happening at the same time. There's people with aligned interests that never need to speak to you. I want my perfect example is the George Soros Antifa thing, because people will be like, because you ask, like, do you think Antifa takes action and directives directly from him? Well, of course not, right? Well, what does he do for them? He gives them money. Why? Because he knows that they're gonna do the thing, because they're Antifa. That's it. It's what they do, right? And so he wants them to go out and do the protests. He wants them to create chaos. He wants them to light fires, and maybe he doesn't say any of that though. And this is the frustrating part for the conspiracy guys. None of this is ever going to be on paper, but what they do benefits what he wants to have happen, and so he bails them out of jail. That's not even a conspiracy. That's him acting in the interest of his own fucking thing, and then doing what the crazy loony left is gonna do. And that's how they take advantage of it. And once you realize that there are no ties, you're not gonna tie them together and drag them before a big tribunal, unfortunately.
Well, no, and
not yet. Like we need to do. There's a lot of groundwork to get to that point that we would have to lay.
And what I've told Vinny and what I've told other like conspiracy-minded people like him, my theory is this: if there is, let's say that they're right, and there's like a super secret cabal that like controls everything, it's not George Soros. We probably.
It doesn't matter, because the solution to both scenarios is the same, is standing up for, basic things that, like, at least from my perspective, and I think yours, like basic American values, right? Like old school, kind of rolling it back at least a couple decades.
Yeah, but and then the rebuttal is, oh, well, the powers that be are too powerful, and it's like, no, they're not. Like the powers that be, as we just discussed for the last 2 hours, are largely incompetent. They can't even fix railways properly.
They're in complete disarray as well. Like they're all at each, because now everybody on both sides of the aisle smells blood in the water for the next election, right? And so they're all trying to fucking take shots at each other and stab everybody in the fucking back. And it's going to be a bloodbath. We'll see who comes out on top. I have my favorites. Other people have theirs. Let them all fight, I say at this point.
Yeah.
It'll be a shit show. Let's let it happen. I want Biden to run now. I've thought about it long and hard, and like he should, because he's giving an FU to all his handlers is what he's doing. He might not be competent, but he is a stubborn ass old man, and sometimes you got to respect how much of a stubborn old man he is when he thinks he's gonna fucking run again. You know, I can't help but laugh and admire the temerity of that stubborn Irish motherfucker. Right?
Listen,
It's a terrible idea, though.
listen. Biden is hilarious, but
Yeah.
it's because he, not because he is intentionally being funny, but because he's just Joe Biden. Like the whole screaming at clouds. You know, he literally is the proverbial old man screams at cloud.
He's fucking Grandpa
meme.
Simpson. In real life, you know, back in my day, we wore onions on our belt. That was the style of, like, that's him. And then people are like, Mr. President, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, listen, Jack, you don't know a thing or two about the onion belts, okay?
Yeah, that's
I like it now though. When he wasn't taking questions during the whole train derailment thing, or even before, because he doesn't take questions anymore. It's amazing if you actually watch it in real time, because he just sits there with like an angry smile on his face, looking at the fucking press for like 30 to 60 seconds every time. And they're going to ask questions at that point because he's sitting there, right? He's like, okay, we're done. And then he just sits there and looks at them. And then he just walks away. It's the weirdest thing, you know. It's like the most uncomfortable thing. He sits there way too long with this dopey fucking grin on his face, like he's like, aha, got you. I'm just not gonna say anything.
Well, and the thing of it is this is why we never saw him with Obama when Obama was president. Right? I mean, other than the fact that he's the vice president and you never always see the vice president, but like if Biden had been besides Obama 24/7, it would have made Obama look weird.
Well, and he's always known for being a fucking idiot. Like long before he was a demented idiot, he was just an idiot.
Yeah.
And a plagiarist.
Yes, Joe Biden was known for being a parasitic gaffe machine,
and a racist too.
Yeah,
yes,
Clarence Thomas,
one of the more racist ones.
Oh, by the way, that's another topic that I'm told is somehow banned off YouTube, which is the Clarence Thomas hearings, because Me Too shit and whatnot. Even though it happened, even though that fucking happened 30 fucking years before Me Too, but whatever.
You know what I think, Sammy? We got a favor done to you in you getting banned, right? Because it enchains you to talk about things instead of dancing around their stupid fucking algorithm and their stupid fucking censorship bots.
Yeah, well, as I explained to people, like it wasn't that much of a loss for me because like I lost 800 subs, but I wasn't getting like, people weren't seeing notifications from my videos until the next day. Sometimes people were getting unsubscribed, you know, from the channel. You know, I like, ironically, the E-drama stuff was the only thing that YouTube would push in the algorithm, which I kind of find.
No shit. People ask why I do a show about E-drama now, but even though I don't do like, I don't do like famous, you know, lolcows, I have my own little cadre of interesting fellows that I follow. But why do I do that? Because the last time I was doing politics, Tim Pool actually copyright struck me and said I needed to take down a video because I was making fun of him for being bald.
Yeah, Gavin, the whole reason why I started the Whitfield Report channel instead of just, you know, doing it under my name was because I uploaded a clip with commentary of like something that Gavin McGinnis said, and Gavin McGinnis struck it down because he's a whiny bitch.
Facts.
Even though in the video I was literally saying, "Hey, look, this guy makes a good point."
You know what's
one of the strikes that a group I'm with, one of the strikes that a YouTube channel that I run with other people got was from Mundane Matt. I don't know if you know about the clip where he it's from some movie he produced with some friends, where he uses a plastic bag to kill a guy in the movie. He's like
Monday Matt Snuff film confirmed.
It's like 11 seconds long, and I posted that up, and basically I posted it as, I said basically fair use, fuck you, and I'm commenting on it right now, and I don't think I ended up fighting it, but yeah, I should have. If it's still, I can still fight it now if it's still down. And if it is, eventually I'll probably get to it. But I did that specifically because he was flagging that shit down elsewhere, like on Twitter and so on. So I went ahead and posted it up there and said basically, fuck you, man. And he flagged it down.
Mundane Matt is not. That's not Matt Jarbo, is it?
That's Matt Jarbo.
Yeah.
Okay. It is Matt Jarbo.
He used to flag everybody. I think you weren't really aware because I know you correspond with him on Twitter and shit. Like he's not the way he was back then, I'll say.
Thankfully.
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen documentaries on the way that he was. However, what was funny was I was going to offer him to do a debate stream with Nerdrotic because he's been beefing with like another movie critic YouTuber, I guess. And so I was basically going to let them like hash out, but like neither of them have gotten back to me, I guess. And I mean people still hate Jarbo, I guess, but to each their own.
Well, he's calmed himself down, and he seems to have finally gotten himself like it. It was funny enough at the time because it was being used as a sad excuse in the infamous Boulder stream, where he got outed as flagging everybody, but at the same time, there must have been something to him being in a bad place at the time because he clearly has gone through some self-improvement since then.
Well, he suffered as a result of it. He basically lost his whole career.
That too.
And so, like, I listen to a lot of because I like Pod Awful, right? I'm one of those guys. I know everybody in the world's like, oh, I don't find it funny, whatever. He did these great streams. It's just Matt Jarbo and Jesse, and it's some of the goddamn funniest like 2 a.m. bullshit I ever fucking heard in my life. Because it's Jesse asking like real questions and Jarbo being real about it, and it's pretty good stuff actually. It's really funny. It's really really funny, but of course Jesse's not funny, so never mind.
Oh no, he's terribly unfunny.
Well, the thing
I heard he tells fibs sometimes, and that's
Well, the thing about Jesse is always, and it's clear that he's doing a character, but he's just always doing that character.
Yeah. It's not like high fucking art, He's just pulling pranks on people, and I think people take that kind of shit too serious. But you know who's an untapped pool of locales? That's why I bring this up. It's like we can lean into an untapped pool of locales. That are called politicians, right?
Oh yeah,
because they're a laugh a fucking minute, when you stop yourself from crying.
Well, I mean, I was going to do videos on AOC a few years ago, but then everyone beat me to the punch with that. So And yeah,
Yeah.
you want to talk about someone with a horse face? That's definitely her.
She's an interesting one. But you know, the good thing is, like any good lolcow, she never stops providing milk, right? Like this broad, she live streams herself on Instagram like a fucking e-thought while she's a goddamn sitting congresswoman, and it's hilarious. I don't know if you've ever watched, like, most people see clips of it on Twitter, but I'm telling you, watch like 5 minutes of an AOC stream if you get the chance. If you see
Yeah,
that pop up, because it's
yeah,
So
so
the
funny.
clip, the only clip you need to watch, like, to definitely know what caliber of intellectual she is the one where she discovers an instinct disposal.
Yeah.
I've
What is that? It's just like, oh, fuck me, lady, you are so.
yeah,
Go back to the bar.
I think I think I've seen that clip. I think I've seen that clip, and then I've also seen the stupid one where she's like dancing on the roof or whatever. The one that
Oh, that
got
was
made
just silly fun. That was like a video she made in college
yeah,
to mime a what the hell is that movie? It was the scene right out of a movie. That's what they were
Titanic.
doing. No.
I wish. Oh wait, no. In the Titanic, the chick survives. Never mind. No, but there's plenty of ammunition. They're always up to stupid shit. I mean, like I guess a different angle I could take on the show is I like the financial shit. I can really dig into that kind of stuff.
Oh
Big
yeah,
in Econ Spurg.
oh yeah, that's right. We can talk about that here now too, because
Me
yeah.
and Shmuley in particular, like that's our one of our fascinations.
Well,
is
listen,
economics.
I used to talk stocks all the time with my late grandfather. So, you know.
Well, gentlemen, it is 12:30.
Yes, sir. I was gonna say the same thing. I
Yeah,
gotta get up
We are
and
well
get my
past
son.
pumpkin hour.
Yeah, it is. We all ought to wrap this up. Thanks to all of you for thanks to both of you, and oh shoot, real quick, Davey Crocco coming in with the $2 donation. Taking calls. Not tonight. I think we're gonna wrap it up, but I might do a call-in stream on Friday, maybe. But,
I think Friday for Collins does seem like it would be fun, you know. You do Friday we could do like Monday for like general news, funny shit, Wednesday guest, and then Friday Collins.
Well, Monday is when I do the general news.
Yeah.
I try and keep that under an hour. Wednesday is like the long form show we have tonight, and then Friday we haven't really had one yet, but that might just be for whatever. So
Yeah, well, like Shmuley and I have been working on a lot of like bits and comedy stuff that would fit in on like a Friday show with Collins and fun, mostly politically oriented, you know.
But anyway, Craig, thanks for coming on. Anything you want to plug real quick? Where can people find you?
So you can, usually you'll be able to find me shit posting on Twitter at CraigBob99. I have a link tree which is posted in the bio there. Same handle, so linktree/CraigBob99. And otherwise, you'll be able to find me talking the same kind of shop we did here tonight with my buddies Steve and Evan over at that Fake Untitled podcast. So at that fake guy Dan on Twitter. He's our ringleader.
Cool.
Yeah, that's more or less where you'll be able to catch more of my brilliant bullshit.
The Spurg Wrangler, if you will.
Alrighty. Sounds good, and thank you for coming on, and we might have to have you back at some point.
Sure thing.
So. And folks, thanks to all of you who tuned in, and thanks for Max for kind of stepping in here as well tonight. So Want to thank everyone for tuning in and see you on the next episode. Have a good night, folks.
Thanks for listening to The Whitfield Report on the NGC Network. Please visit Sam's website at www.thesamwhitfield.com and support Sam on Patreon at patreon.com/Whitfield Report. Until next time, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order.